you can count on me. You're going to have a good old Rob to talk you through all this. Two, check. Hello. Two. Hello. Hello, friends. Hello, friends. What is up? What is up? You know what? I threw this shirt on because I needed something over. I need something over the shirt. This is not really working for me. Hoodie arrived at Fox. I got questions at the bar. That's great. I'm sure there were interesting questions to have to answer. Lennon Smash. And thank you, Lennon Smash, for the gifted sub as well. I very much appreciate that. One sec. Speaking of hoodie, though, just hang on one moment. Had to call an audible there. Had to call an audible. That's working a bit better for me. Feeling a little better now. the Mr. Rogers look, of course. It's going from my ongoing effort to be known as Socialist Mr. Rogers. How are you doing, friends? How's your weekend? Talk to me. How was the weekend? Mine was pretty uneventful. I should have pre-showed, but for some reason my doctor's office is actually open, so I have an appointment today. Also, we don't need to discuss this out. Okay, yeah. Yes. Vindicated yet again. Lodane. We gotta trust Lodane's gut on certain issues. My weekend was pretty uneventful. I didn't end up going to see SmackDown, which was kind of unfortunate. The friend that I was going to go see SmackDown with ended up kind of bailing, so I didn't go. It seemed like a pretty cool environment. I was hoping to be able to be a part of it. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But I did have a nice Friday nonetheless, eating pizza and watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You know? That's usually my Friday night, is pizza in a classic movie night. So regardless of though I didn't go to see SmackDown, it was still very enjoyable. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is just an unbelievably good movie. It's just unbelievably good. It has no right to be as good as it is. Fucking Bob Hoskins in that movie. Yeah, Bob Hoskins, like, he should have won an Oscar for that movie. It's just one of the most unbelievable acting performances ever. Ever. Like, he's got such a huge range in that movie. He goes from this, like, humorless, hard-boiled detective alcoholic archetype to the end of the movie when he becomes, like, a living cartoon character. And he's doing all that classic pratfalls and comedy bits. Iconic comedy stuff at the end. It's just like, Bob Hoskins in that movie is just absolutely incredible. He had to get help after that role because he was talking to nothing. No stand-ins, no models. Well, that's what I was thinking too, like how difficult that must be. Because even like before the technology is proven, that before that technology, that was the first time they'd ever really done that on the level that they were doing it. So it's like, you've got to be making that movie and thinking to yourself, like, is this going to be awful? Like, what am I doing here? You know? Am I going to look foolish doing this? That must be really difficult. In general, that's got to be a hard part about being an actor, but generally in that kind of a context as well. And he just absolutely brings it. He just absolutely brings it. And it works. It should not have worked. It should not have worked at all, but it's just incredible. Yeah, Dakadoon, really recommend giving that a rewatch. Like, I watch it with my kid and he enjoys it, so that's my excuse. But just as like a achievement, just as like an artistic achievement, it's just, I think, worth revisiting. Like, when you look at how they made that movie, it's just incredible. Like, they rigged all that big bar scene where they rigged all the glasses to be moving by themselves, and like all the actors are there and all these props are just like flying around all over the place around them, which they then just seamlessly turned into Toon characters later. Also, a lot of adult undertones I didn't understand as a kid. For sure, yeah, it's quite gritty. It's very gritty. Introduce my kids to Scooby and Scrappy. That's good. That's good, Dakadoon. My kid loves Scooby-Doo as well. Fucking great movie. So that's what I did on Friday. What did I even do on Saturday? I think I fell asleep really early on Saturday. I fell asleep early both days, actually. Yeah, Saturday I was putting my kid to sleep and then fell asleep at the same time. And then woke up at like midnight and then was up for hours in the middle of the night.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Zach, thank you for the raid. Hello, Zach. Hello, Zach. Raiders. Bring it in here. Thank you for the raid, Zach. I hope the stream was good today. I appreciate it. I'm Rob. Hello. I'm a socialist Twitch streamer here in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Please smash the follow button. Smash the follow button. Completely free of charge. Twitch won't let me resubscribe. What will I do without Mushrob? Damn. Red Scare is being silenced. After that ChatGPT email on Friday, now Red Scary has been demoted. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate stuff. That was one thing about this weekend, was I became obsessed with ChatGPT and sending corporate style passive aggressive emails to community members who displease me in the Discord. I became very obsessed with that, which is very fun. A couple of you got corporate style AI written emails from me over the weekend. So that's, I didn't get one. You're on thin ice there. You're on thin ice, Johnny. You're on thin ice. I know what it's like with young children. Yeah, it's tough.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Red Scare, for the 25 months. Tier 1. Although no Mush Rob for you, though. No Mush Rob for you. I've been goofing around with it, but I'm mostly asking it for summaries of Wikipedia and fandom pages. I did use it. You'll notice in the title of this program, just so I can do this to ChatGPT and the other computers that displease me. I did use ChatGPT. You'll notice in the title of this program, I did indicate that there is a special surprise coming today. I did create something pretty...
You can count on me. You're
wacky.
gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Rob knows better than to mess with me. My AI power level is over 9,000.
Thank you, Ghost, for the 25 months of tier 1. I really appreciate that, Ghost. Thank you. I would never dream of messing with you. Never. I'm refraining from being mean to ChatGPT because when the AI takes over, I don't want to get immediately nuked. That's right. You want them to know that you're one of the good ones. But I did use ChatGPT to create something pretty kind of crazy. Which I don't want to show just yet. Fuck. I'm tempted to show it now because I actually put work into it. It's for the first interlude. I was hoping to save it. I was hoping to save it till the first interlude, but I did create something for this community, a little presentation. I created a little video presentation about the community, which I do intend to show later on. Later on, I'm going to wheel in that cart.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I have always been one of the good ones, Rob. Left FL1 Candy Lick.
Thank you, Red Wizard. You are one of the good ones. Thank you. For the 17 months of tier 1. Hell yeah. Dacky dude, I should say no more. I guess I just have to. I just have to show it. I was supposed to wait. I should have just waited for the interlude. I should have just waited, but I can't resist, okay? I can't resist. I'll show it later as well, but I guess there's enough people here. There's enough people here that I can try and explain what the community is about to the new people that just visited. You can just show it again. That's right. There's enough people here that maybe I can show this video, which I just created for new viewers, lurkers, and people that are considering joining the community. So I'll show this later again, but here we go. I hope you're all just sitting down. I'm gonna wheel in that cart with the TV like the substitute used to do. Okay, here we go.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down clout, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult.
I don't know. Hopefully this is worth a couple of subs. I spent hours on this. Okay, I spent time on this. Hopefully this will bring in a couple subs.
You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Sign me up, TRRS Sankara TRRS Friendship Triangle.
Thank you, Sophisticated Pills, for the 25 months tier 1. Thank you.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And thank you very much to Comrade Social Distancing. Truly one of the elite members of this community. Truly one of the elite members. That if you rise up the ranks, you too can have access to elite members such as Comrade Social Distancing as well.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Continues cult. I mean channel subscription.
Take Carrillo, thank you for the 6 months tier 1. Thank you. The Bode CRT is a really nice touch. I know. It really like
good old Rob to talk you through all this.
It really landed in the exact aesthetic that I was hoping for. Thank you, 10,000 sandwiches for the 3 gifted sub as well. It's okay, Sean. If you're too broke to donate, please. It's okay. It's okay. Be careful as you rise into the elite zone. You become a target for chatbot slander. Well, unfortunately, some of the elite tier members sometimes get a little too comfortable making certain comments to me and others. Hurtful comments. We don't need to name names. We don't need to name names. Sometimes they need to be reminded. Man, yeah, this really did land in the exact aesthetic that I was hoping for. Like some old VHS that you find in your parents' attic or something. You know? And all that, that was like all the copy was written by ChatGPT. I did give it a little edit, like ChatGPT gave the first draft, and I gave it a little edit, but like 99% of that was just produced by ChatGPT of that copy. Like it really, yeah, it is like, yeah, it's exactly the Dharma Initiative aesthetic. That's exactly what I wanted to do, Plunger Man. People don't know you die in 7 days after watching that tape unless you become part of the triangle. I mean, it's probably just a coincidence, but like, do you want to test that theory? That's the thing. That's the question. It's probably fine, but what if it isn't? We are on a hype train now, so I'm just going to show it one more time. I'm going to show it one more time, and again, hopefully this will bring in a couple more subs, because I did spend time and energy creating this absolutely insane video.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down clout, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult.
Red Wizard, I like that. The TRRS also stands for the Rob Reward System. I do like that as well. I do like that. That's nice. It's good to just have on in the background, too.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, DRP, for the gifted sub as well. Thank you very much, DRP. Just play the entire video every time someone subs. Well, that's the thing. It's like I wrote that as a joke because I created this copy and I wrote that like as a joke in the Discord, which would be a funny bit, but like obviously it's way too long. But I was like, I really would like to hear that copy in that kind of like soulless corporate text-to-speech voice. Just have it endlessly playing during Hype Train. I do think sometimes when I do interludes or whatever, I'll just throw it on a loop. And I'm gonna set it for like the official trailer for the channel, so when you log into the channel, that's what you see. Anyway, it's kind of good to just have one in the background as well. I didn't end up going to WWE. No, I didn't. Unfortunately. It might need a screenshot of you holding up the Stalin book. That's probably a good idea. I got a couple of other suggestions for what could be thrown in there. I think it's going to evolve over time. People should join the Discord and the Finance Sickos channel alone, even though nothing interesting happens in there. Certainly not coup discussions and planning. Oh, I know exactly what happens in there. I know exactly what happens in the Finance Sickos channel, and I even know what happens in the secret TRRS community members DM group chat. Oh, you don't think I know about that? Yeah, of course I fucking know about it. Oh, but Rob, there's no such channel. Yeah, please. You're embarrassing yourself. Come on now. We do have 2 minutes left of this hype train, folks. We do have. I spent hours making this video, right? We could just get this whole sub business out of the way, this nasty sub business out of the way, up front, so we wouldn't even have to talk about it anymore. I've got my little birds. I've got my little birds in all your little group chats. Is there an account called Not Rob or something in the secret channel? Mr. Snrub. Like the comical mustache. There's no way Rob can infiltrate this one. The question is, who's the mole? Who's the mole? I'll leave that up to you to figure out. I'll leave that up to you to figure out. I'll be tearing each other apart like The Thing or something. Okay. We'll return to that later. I'm glad you enjoyed the content that I created for your enjoyment. I did, even though I didn't go to wrestling though, I did just watch the Sami Zayn Roman Reigns WWE Championship match right before starting the stream. And that was a lot of fun. Awesome match. I was happy to see Sammy get that, get the shine of being in that main event, that huge hometown reaction. I loved the psychology of the match. I absolutely love, as much as I'm a big fan of Sami Zayn and, a Montreal guy, and I still do I still have to acknowledge the Tribal Chief, frankly, because I thought he was just awesome in that match. And just in this kind of like psychological battle against the crowd. I really enjoyed that. And frankly, this might be kind of controversial, but I kind of, even though I'm a fan of Sami Zayn, and I wanted to cheer for him as the underdog, I kind of agreed with Roman's perspective. Roman tried to bring Sami Zayn into the bloodline. Roman helped make Sami into this super relevant WWE superstar. And all Sami had to do to cement that, to be fully officially part of the family, was to simply hit Kevin Owens with a chair. Kevin Owens, a man who has betrayed Sami Zayn literally dozens of times. Literally dozens of times over the years, over the 20 years that they've been interacting and having a rivalry. Kevin Owens, time and time again, betrays this guy, betrays his trust. In these big moments, comes to take his moment away and humiliate him in front of everyone. In his most triumphant moments, like we saw when Sami Zayn won the NXT Championship all the way back in 2014. Kevin Owens, who, in the same circumstance, would not have thought twice about absolutely leveling Sami with the chair if it was going to be beneficial to him in any way. And for this guy, Sami threw away all the alliance that he had fought so hard to create. He had found a place for himself finally in the bloodline. And just because he couldn't hit this guy Kevin Owens with a chair, he threw it all away. I kind of agreed with Roman's perspective on this. Frankly, I don't know if that's controversial. I don't know if any of you are following me on here. I don't know if the wrestling TRRS community is really present right now. But I had to get this off my chest. I love Sami. I love seeing him in that match. I think it was clear that he wasn't going to win the match, but still did make us believe a little bit. In that match, it was very fun, but ultimately, I just know Kevin Owens is going to betray him again. Kevin Owens is just going to betray him again. I don't know what he needs to do for Sami to learn. That Kevin Owens is a snake. I love him as a wrestler. He's an amazing wrestler, an amazing pro wrestler, but he's a snake. I don't take him seriously as a good guy. And he's going to betray Sami yet again. It's only a matter of time. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be next month. But Kevin Owens is going to betray Sami again. And Sami will have thrown away his one opportunity to have real connections with people. A real alliance of people that he could trust. Yeah, it's very much like Jake the Snake. You just don't trust, even when they're trying to they're trying to make him a good guy. He's trying to act like a good guy that you can trust. You can't. You just shouldn't. These are just people that you're not. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. And I don't think Kevin Owens deserves the benefit of the doubt. Take care, Lodane. Good luck at your appointment. Anyway, That was my thoughts on that. I did absolutely just love Reigns. His interactions with the crowd were just phenomenal. For me, Rob talking about wrestling is like him talking about the TPRK when we get a Majority Report raid. Some people love it. Some people love it, Red Scary. Sometimes I get the immediate feedback from people and people really enjoy it. Today is not one of those times. Today is not one of those times. This is the thing, you know. I love Sami Zayn. I would even consider him a friend. Not that we've ever hung out or anything. We've exchanged DMs a few times. He's a Montreal guy. We live in the same neighborhood. You know, he's part of my community. I love the guy. But here's all I'm going to say to Sami, though. When Kevin Owens eventually betrays you again, Sami, I don't want to hear any whining about it. I don't want to hear the pity. I don't want to hear the self-pitying. I can't believe he did this again. Like, no, why didn't you believe it? Why? Why do you trust this guy? Why are you giving him another opportunity? How many opportunities does this man need? He's gotten a chance after chance after chance. And every time, every single time, he goes back to the same snake-like, narcissistic behavior. Because that's who he is. That's what he's about. Anyway. I did love the match, though. It would have been cool to go. The atmosphere was really great. It was a really great atmosphere for a wrestling match. Like, the match started, the bell rang, and they didn't even, like, lock up for, like, 7 or 8 minutes. They were literally just standing there for the longest time, and the crowd was just not, like, just nonstop. And Roman Reigns absolutely thrives in that kind of environment. He was like interacting with Sami Zayn's wife in the front row and, like, laughing and smiling and, like complaining to her that Sami, like, put him in that position. God, it's so great. He's just phenomenal. He's just phenomenal. Even though I love Sami, I still must acknowledge the tribal chief. I'm sorry. I think too many people in this community are not, and I know when Marty eventually watches the VOD of this, I'm pretty sure he's busy right now. When Marty watches this, he'll appreciate that I'm taking this moment to still, regardless of the hometown bias, acknowledge my tribal chief and yours. We need more Rob watches reality television streams. I mean, I would like that. If I ever got to the point where I would be doing, like, longer streams, like that time in the summer when I did a couple of, like, 7, 8, 9 hour streams, I could maybe have a segment where I did that, but I don't know if that's going to be happening anytime soon. Isn't he from Iowa? He's announced from Florida. Anyway, I guess that's all. If there's no TRRS wrestling faction in the chat, I guess I don't need to continue, but that's all I wanted to say about it. We can do beverages. That's true. I am going to go get a Coke. And then I think after that we can get into, like, what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to take a look at some of the footage from this anti-war rally, the Rage Against the War Machine rally, and talk a little bit about how people are kind of using that anti-war messaging and saying things that are very true and correct about Ukraine and about the United States military establishment, and pulling people in, using that very true words to pull people into this, down this reactionary path. I've been avoiding discussion about it as well, but I think it's considering we talk about this kind of stuff so much, and Ukraine and anti-imperialism and all this stuff, I think it's worth talking about. I think it's worth it. And trying to find some kind of like nuanced position on it, maybe. That's not just like, I think, because here's the issue, here's the problem in these moments, when I think people say like, well, Jimmy Dore, I don't like that guy, so therefore when he's saying these things, what he's saying is bad. And I think that's a really simplistic way of looking at it. And we need to be able, whether it comes to people like Jimmy Dore or any of these like patriotic socialists or LaRoucheites or whoever, I think it's really important to take a look at the things that they say and separate the truth from the fiction, and try and really acknowledge that even when they're saying things that are true that we agree with, we can acknowledge that we have these points that we agree on, but also make sure we understand how they're wielding this kind of truth in order to pull people down a reactionary path. I think that's the thing we need to talk about. Hey, let me get my Coke. We'll get to this in a few minutes. We were just talking about this in Theory Book Club, but if communists abandon these movements and struggles, of course, they're taken over by right-wing opportunists. This is kind of the big problem, right? And how this is the issue with like anarchists and soc dems and liberals all lining up behind NATO and behind these imperialist forces, and how it opens the door for reactionaries to organize in these communities and say things that are very true. The Western left's message was taken and used for nefarious motives. Color me not shocked. It does seem to happen pretty often, doesn't it? See, left-wing communism, should we participate in reactionary trade unions by Lenin for more? I mean, okay, I guess we're just talking about this. I guess we're just talking about it. Why not? While it's... But big links here between this, like, anti-war movement, or whatever you want to call it, with the trucker convoys. Very similar things, right? Where like the target, like, why are you a communist but you don't support this trucker convoy? What do you support, the liberal government? What do you support, big pharma? And it's like, no, of course I don't support either of these things. Of course not. Absolutely not. But I don't think if you're on the left that it's helping anyone to organize with and support these movements these are reactionary movements. Even when they're going after targets that are, I would agree with the actual target. Like with the trucker convoy, like this is a specifically, I'm a socialist, this is a specifically like an anti-communist movement. And there are fascist elements involved in this kind of like the anti-war movement that organize this Rage Against the War Machine protest that happened over the weekend. And if you are a fascist, by definition, you are an anti-communist. So regardless of whether we might agree on some of these concepts, like, how is it a good thing to work with and support and organize with groups that literally want to wipe us out? That's the question. So, and like another, like at this protest, you had who was a featured speaker at this protest? Tulsi Gabbard. Like, if you're an anti-war movement and you have this like former troop who is like contributing to the new Cold War more than they are doing anything to counter it, who supported the war on terror. And this is like a featured speaker at your anti-war protest. Like, it's just incoherent. So this is the question, because I've seen a lot of people, when you criticize this protest, saying like, oh, then you're standing with NATO, or you're standing with the US government, or you're standing with the intelligence community. And it's actually not true at all. No, that is actually not true at all. I don't support any of these things. And I do acknowledge that there's speakers in this movement and at this protest that we saw in the weekend that say things that I happen to agree with when it comes to Ukraine or when it comes to American imperialism. The question is, though, is this like a movement? Where is it pulling people? What is it leading to? Is it pulling people toward the path of being like dedicated anti-imperialists? If it was, I would consider supporting it, but I don't think that it is. I really don't. This will never be fixed. Well, this is a good point, Dimitri. This will never be fixed. Oh, AKA Vladimir Putin, who your secret identity was revealed on over the weekend, I saw. Friend of the stream. They'll never be fixed until communists and socialists start organizing themselves. This is just a tedious game of utter bullshit. And I agree, and that's what Red Scare was saying too. It's like the lack of a coherent left-wing anti-imperialist, anti-war movement is providing space for these kinds of events to happen. And there are anti-war, like left-wing anti-war protests being organized, though. Like Answer, I was talking about the other day. Our friend Radio Free Amanda messaged me actually to want to make sure that we talked about this. The Answer Coalition. Organized something for the 18th as well, but we didn't really hear about it as much. That's part of the reason is like it's not that these left-wing anti-war protests aren't happening, but we don't really hear about them because all we want to talk about are these other more reactionary ones. You know, Code Pink and Answer Coalition and the People's Forum are all trying to organize these kinds of things. Did you know she was like actually backed by Modi's fascist party and was a major force in getting Modi invited to meet Obama back in the day? I mean, that's the thing. It's like we're doing this like anti-war movement, and this like Hindutva supporting fascist sympathizer is like a central figure in it. You know, it's completely incoherent. Yeah, her family's a prominent part of a Hindu fascist cult. But let's take a look at some of the footage from this. So, I've not watched this. I've not watched this though, but here is Jimmy Dore's speech at this Rage Against the War Machine rally. And listen, the reality was like there was a pretty decent turnout for this. Like that's why I don't think we should ignore this. Like there's a pretty decent turnout for this. And I think we do need to engage with some of this stuff and again try and separate the truth from the reaction and try and determine where these movements are leading people down a bad path by saying things that are many times very true. Decent turnout of American First fucking dweebs. Well, I mean, but this is the issue. This is the problem. This is the exact problem, right? These movements are using this kind of rhetoric and using the opposition to the war in Ukraine to effectively organize. It's not good, you know? Excuse me. It's really not good. Which is exactly why I don't think we should ignore it. And the question is as well, like, I don't know what Dore believes about any of this stuff. This whole idea of like working with the right. Working with the right. I mean, we've been hearing about this since 2016, basically. We need to work with the right. Like in 2016 and 17, Mike Cernovich was saying this kind of shit as well. And people were making the same argument then. We need to work with these people. We need to work with the right. Against the war machine, against the intelligence community, against the US government. Like, I didn't agree with this idea in 2016, even though the right is also against, neoliberals. They're a lot of the same enemies. But I didn't believe in this idea of working with the right in 2016, 17, and I continue not believing in it to this day. Yeah, like Red Scary and others are saying, like there is a popular anti-war sentiment. Like we've talked about with Ukraine, like this endless funding of Ukraine is not popular. That's why they're not talking about it as much now. Anyway, let's hear this speech from Jimmy Dore, possible presidential candidate. Jimmy Dore. Let's hear his speech at this anti-war rally. This is actually the kind of shit Lenin is constantly criticizing, going for short-term gains at the expense of actually educating the working masses. Well, this is it. If you're using this anti-war sentiment to organize people, great. But if you're not organizing them towards socialism, well then, like, what is being gained? What is being gained here? Sort of reminds me of how artists being displaced by automation are getting used to make a case for even more IP restrictions, as if that would ever serve the working class. That's true. That's an interesting connection. Okay, I want to hear this. Let's hear this.
I have a list of things we could have bought with that $100 billion instead of sending it to Ukraine for killing people.
The big American flag
Instead of
behind it
sending
too.
money to Ukraine, we could get President Biden a dog that knows where to lead him when a press conference is over.
Oh, hilarious. Fundamentally, the fundamental contradiction as well, waving a big American flags at your anti-war rally, saying you're going against the war machine. America is a war machine. America as a nation is one giant arms manufacturer. That's what makes, like, that murder and genocide and war is what built America. This whole idea of reclaiming that or waving the flag while you're simultaneously trying to criticize the war machine is completely incoherent. The American flag and the war machine are completely inseparable from one another. Let's go back to these hilarious comedy bits, though.
For all the money we've given to Ukraine, do you know how many eggs we could buy? Almost a dozen. With $100 billion, you know, they could say you could end homelessness for $20 to $40 billion. We could have ended homelessness, then restart homelessness, then say we were only kidding, and then end it again. We could give every homeless person in America
Jimmy, are you going to tell jokes or like are you going to get to the fucking
If we
point?
want to help Americans but still show our support for Ukraine, we could buy every homeless person in the United States 7,000 Ukraine flag fleece blankets. For the $100 billion, we can
Like you're at this rally, you've got to turn out at this rally and like this is what you're doing a tight five? Really?
buy 2 FTX collapses.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Yeah, the land bridge shit. Yeah, that's the LaRoucheite stuff. Thank you, anonymous gifter, for the gifted sub. Thank you very much. Our most generous, Christ-like sub gifters. Anonymous gifter. Thank you.
For $100 billion, we could buy every person on Earth a blue check mark on
You can
Twitter.
count on me. You're going to have good old
Because should
Rob
we
to
all have
talk
it-
you through all this.
He's not even funny.
The big Russian flag behind the US flag is funny as well. Maxi, I agree. Thank you, Maxi, for the 19 months tier 1. I appreciate it. Thank you.
An equal opportunity to be insufferable assholes. For $100 billion, we could get Chick-fil-A to stay open on Sundays and perform gay
I can just get to the point, Jimmy. Jesus Christ.
For $100 billion, we can buy an entire separate Russian invasion of Ukraine and have enough left over to pay Hunter Biden's monthly salary for the rest of his life. We can buy every man, woman, and child in America an opportunity to pick something really nice from the Goop catalog.
So this is this Helga Zepp LaRouche. Yeah, there we go. We might need to do a deeper dive into the LaRoucheite stuff. I know our friend Famous Horse is really plugged into that. Maybe we need to do a LaRoucheite deep dive with Famous Horse. I don't know if Horse is around. But I think that may be something we need to explore. Because it's something I think I've purposely tried to avoid learning more about.
I know I didn't get that joke.
I got it.
The Rev Left episode is good.
For
Okay,
$100
maybe we
million,
could do that.
we could have the entire cast of Shark Tank dropped into an actual Shark Tank. We can pay for 90 Alex Jones lawsuits. We can remake the Marvel Avengers movie with the entire original cast, but as a porno.
Is this all this is? Like, did he actually
With the
say
money
anything worthwhile?
We sent to Ukraine, we can hire an entirely separate new police force to protect us from the current police force. I have a list of
Is that all that was? Like, fuck.
All right, let's welcome our next speaker.
I mean, First, front and center, this fucking Fed is, that's probably a pretty good indication of what's going on here. This fucking opportunistic, grifting Fed who's now pivoted to doing like manosphere content. This guy once has said he was a communist like 5 months ago. Now he's doing like free Andrew Tate manosphere workout video shit. That should be a pretty good indication of like where this is. These people are just chasing views. And I guess that's you're right, Red Scary. And I think we do need to talk about how, like, these are not people that are allied with us, or allies with us. While we can still recognize when they do say things that are true, even though Jimmy could have made that point in one sentence. We sent Ukraine $100 billion to send them weapons when we could have, provided food and shelter to people in our own country. That's an important point. I don't know if you need to turn that into like a 3-minute tight, comedy bit, whatever, We can recognize the Nazbol plan when it repeats in real time. Yes, we can. But we also have to be steadfast in maintaining our own analysis of this. And not use this. And frankly, that's what I think the purpose of a lot of this stuff is, that all the Fed infiltration into this kind of a movement, of which there is a lot that we can look into. The whole reason for that, though, is to make it so when you say, I don't support the war in Ukraine, I don't support sending weapons to Ukraine, you get put into a camp with these people as a way to delegitimize your opinion. That's the whole reason that, the spooks are promoting this kind of movement. And the LaRoucheite cult is linked with the CIA. That's the entire reason, right? The same reason they've created this entire like conspiracy community, to delegitimize any kind of conversation about JFK, about Ukraine, 9/11, the war on terror, whatever it is, these communities become created. And then when you sit there and say, yes, I'm against the war in Ukraine, yes, I'm against NATO, no, I don't support sending arms to Ukraine, no, I don't support American proxy wars, no, I don't support the American new Cold War, and you get lumped into a category with these people as a way to dismiss you and to dismiss your viewpoint. It really shows the lack of messaging by certain revolutionary parties in the country that gets tapped by these guys. It does to me. Part of it is like, I don't think the parties have gone far enough. Like DSA, for example, Dimitri, the International Committee on DSA has been excellent on this all along and are very good on these anti-imperialist issues. Unfortunately, you have a lot of like DSA members being like, oh, they think that's like the worst part of being in DSA, is dealing with the people that are correct about these things. PSL as well is heavily implicated in that Answer Coalition and Code Pink, and like they've been excellent on this as well. Again, I think it's tough when you don't have funding or people to platform you either. That's what I mean. It's like there are people on the left that are loudly being correct about this, but they don't get the same level of like media saturation, social media saturation, attention, funding, support. It's there, but it's intentionally hamstrung by all these institutions. I saw this as well. There's this whole rally. I don't know if we need to watch the whole thing. I really don't think we need to sit here for 3 hours and watch all of that, though. There's this as well, though. Isn't this like libertarian LaRoucheite shit as well? This was the YouTube chat. This is the YouTube chat during one of these speeches. Just this nonstop end the Fed stuff. Spamming. Yeah, the Ron Paul people. That's right. And again, we were all naive 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds at one point that got interested in the Ron Paul phenomenon because they would say correct things. They would say correct things. Ron Paul and people in that libertarian movement would say things that were 100% correct about the war on drugs, the police, a lot of these things. That's exactly why when you're a kind of naive and politically illiterate person, as a teenager, you can get pulled into these movements because they say things that are very true. And they disguise all those heavily reactionary views within that truth. This is the problem, right? This is what was going on in the Ron Paul movement 20 years ago, and it's the same thing that's going on right now. Excuse me. Yeah, thanks, Red Scary. Let's look at this Mike Preisner speech. While we're talking about an anti-war movement that's not leading people in this reactionary direction.
Susan Brothers, thanks everyone for being here. We're from the organization March Forward. We're here to say to all those
you can count on me and have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Just been swimming. Now it's time to dive into some news.
Hell yeah, King Uendo. Thank you very much for the 28 months of Tier 1. Thank you, King Uendo, for all the support you've shown the channel. Were you actually just swimming, or was that just a pun that you were doing about diving into the news? That's what I want to know. They got me with the anti-war, anti-drug war rhetoric. Exactly. This is what I mean. This is what we need to be very weary of. And we need to simultaneously continue to be, anti-war, anti-imperialist in our own beliefs and our own analysis. But we also have to push back on these reactionary movements that are using the anti-war messaging in order to bring people into this path, down this path of reaction and conspiracy. And ultimately, which is supporting the security state and not going against it. Yeah, or turning people against LGBTQI plus issues, putting people onto the anti-vax stuff. That's another thing Jimmy Dore is doing now. He's like a big anti-vax type. Same with Max Blumenthal. Max Blumenthal, who was a big part of this rally as well, who promoted this rally, who also says a lot of things that I happen to agree with when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to Israel, Palestine, etc. He's another one that's going down this anti-vax path as well, down this path of reaction. We need to be able to separate the truth from the fiction with this movement. And like I said, we shouldn't just take this reactionary position as well, that because Jimmy Dore or Jackson Tinkle or whatever his name is, or whoever are saying things about Ukraine or saying things about Israel or saying things about imperialism that we agree with, that does not mean that they're our allies, So just because they're saying some of these things doesn't mean we need to say, well, those things are wrong, I'm against this because I don't want to be on the same side as one of these people that I don't like. We have to be steadfast in our own analysis and ensure that we're creating a space for people to follow the correct path.
Susan Brothers, thanks everyone for being here. We're from the organization March Forward. We are here to say to all those serving in the Army and the Marines and the Air Force and the Navy that you have the absolute right to refuse to take part in these criminal wars, and that's a right that all of you should exercise. You have no reason to go put your life on the line and kill and die for profit. We've been to Iraq, we've been to Afghanistan, and we know what these wars are really about. And we joined the military for many reasons. Because we need a college education, because we need a job, because we need health care. And then we joined the military, and they tell us that our enemies are poor people in caves in Afghanistan, or poor people in the deserts of Iraq. But we've been to those countries, and we know that our enemies are not other poor people abroad. Our enemies are the people that laid us off from our jobs, that denied us health care, that make it impossible to get an education. Our enemies are not in the poorest countries on the planet, but right here in the richest one. The occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan alone are costing over $700 million every single day. This is a crime. Every single day, while so many of us are hurting. Well, I think all of us here, and the vast majority of people in this country, would agree that we can spend $700 million a day better than bombing people that we have no reason to bomb. We can spend $700 million a day rebuilding those countries we've destroyed. We can spend $700 million a day caring for the veterans we get home when they get home. And then we can spend $700 million a day giving every single person health care, a college education, a job, and a livelihood, and a home. That's what we need to be spending our money on. But this government is not going to do that. They're not going to use the money in that way. They're not going to end the wars. And they're not going to do it because it's not our government. It's their government. It's the government of the rich. It's the government of Wall Street, of the oil giants, of the defense contractors. It's their government, and the only language that they understand is shutting down business as usual. And that's what we're doing here today, and we're going to continue to do until these wars are over. It's crystal clear now that these wars are going to continue and expand and go into other countries. That is the trend. That is what we know, that there is perpetual war, and it's only going to stop if the people stand up and stop it. And that's what we're going to do, sisters and brothers. A lot of people ask me, what do we do? Because we all know things are bad. We all see the atrocities on TV. We read about it. We experience it.
Yeah, time for wisdom. This is not from the Rage Against the War Machine protest. This is an example of like an actually good and ideologically coherent anti-war movement. And this is Mike Preisner, who's married to Abby Martin. And this is like a really great speech. I think we're watching this to contrast against the more reactionary anti-war movement, Fed-sponsored anti-war movement, libertarian and reactionary anti-war movement that we saw over the weekend. And PSL member, that's right. Again, PSL's been great on this. They're really, because that's Brian Becker. It's Brian Becker, Answer Coalition, PSL. They've all been excellent on this. But they don't get nearly the same amount of coverage or support or funding. And there's a reason for that, because they're actually having an analysis that's leading people down the proper path of anti-imperialism, the correct path. The Stalinist cult, PSL, that's right.
People always ask, what do I do? Because we always want to know what to do. Do we vote? Do we support a politician? Do we join an organization? What do we do? Well, I'll tell you what we do. It's simple. We fight. We fight, and we fight, and we fight, and we shut down our workplaces. We shut down our schools. We shut down the streets. We shut down business as usual. And we fight until we force the people in there to do what the people out here want. Because that's how we're going to get around, and we're going to fight until there's not one more bomb drop, not one more bullet fired, not one more soldier coming home in a wheelchair, not one more family slaughtered, not one more day of U.S. imperialism. Let's fight to make that happen. We can do it today, and in the days ahead, we have to fight to end these wars and create a better world, sisters and brothers.
Yeah, that's great. That's great stuff. Do I want to hear this? I just don't know. Do we need to watch the Jackson Hinkle speech? I would love to see Mike Preisner and Abby Martin on your show. Well, Sicer, I've been in touch with Abby many times about coming on the show. It's just they're very like if she hasn't just had a baby, she's like right on the verge of having a baby. So they're very busy with their own work. I've been in touch with her like probably 4 or 5 times of coming on the show. It's just a matter of finding the right moment for it. Eventually, Abby will come on, though. I promise. Because I have a lot of respect for the work that they do. The point of all this discussion, though, is just to talk about why. And sorry, I thought this was such a great comment from a few moments ago. From Envy Adams. So much of your stream is confirming to people that they can, in fact, have 2 thoughts in their heads at once. It do be like that. It's very true. But this is my point, though. We can't allow these libertarians and LaRouchites or whatever you want to call them. We can't allow them to monopolize this conversation. And we can't abandon our own beliefs when it comes to imperialism or when it comes to supporting peace, when it comes to opposing the military machine. We can't just abandon that because we see how there's this more reactionary movement that's using this stuff to organize around. Here's Claire Daly.
1 year on, as the war in Ukraine continues, when voices everywhere should be calling for a ceasefire and peace, this resolution is driving us in the opposite direction, so I proudly voted against it. It peddles the latest lie that this is not now about defending Ukraine, it's about Ukraine must win. What does that even mean? Last April, there was a deal on the table which would have seen Russia withdraw in return for Ukrainian non-NATO membership, but Ukraine's Western friends, killer clown Boris Johnson and NATO rocked into town and told them to keep fighting.
As they've acknowledged, like even Merkel, we talked about this the other day, even Merkel has acknowledged that the Minsk agreements, which would have prevented this war from ever happening if they had been followed, no one in the West had any intention of ever allowing Ukraine to actually follow those Minsk agreements. As Merkel clearly stated, it was all just about buying time so they could give Ukraine the weapons and training that they needed to turn this into a quagmire and not get rolled overnight.
Result,
they've admitted that.
6 cities devastated, 4 provinces illegally annexed, 108 billion euros in aid, which the people of Ukraine are going to have to pay back over decades, global food and energy crisis. Is this winning? Ordinary people don't win in wars. They're cannon fodder in the games of others. And ye can shout glory in here all you like, but there's no glory in the grave, and only graves come out of this folly. It's time for people and the silent majority all over Europe to take to the streets this weekend and demand peace and an end to the war.
Yeah, and like Sinchal, like what Sinchal is saying, U.S. is basically taking over Ukraine, like all the supporters think Russia is doing, as we outlined in our conversation with Amanda a couple weeks ago, right? This childish notion that Ukraine is about like sovereignty versus autocracy, or we're defending Ukrainians' democracy, we're defending their sovereignty. When all it's going to mean is that Ukraine is going to be all like what our political leaders want is for Ukraine to sacrifice however many people in their country that they need to in order to ensure that it remains a compliant satellite state of the West that has maximum capital penetration from these like multinational corporations and has destroyed whatever labor movement exists, whatever social spending exists, and implemented like the most draconian economic model possible to allow that capitalist exploitation to continue. But yeah, this is going great. Like, we watched the clip the other day of Cuomo interviewing like a teenager on his way to Ukraine. And like, this is the shit that they're sharing on social media. This is a fucking kid. We're supposed to support this? How old is this kid? Like, this is fucking disturbing. And our liberal and anarchist friends are suggesting that this is like a good thing. Like, again, we were comparing that Verhoeven clip from Starship Troopers. I'm doing my part. When you're conscripting child soldiers and using them in your propaganda, that's not a sign that your war is going well. And still, apparently, the only position we're allowed to have is to perpetuate this endlessly. Perpetuate this violence endlessly. Like, it's incredibly disturbing. I wonder if there's clips from the actual answer protests that were going on. The problem here is that Putin has not, as far as I'm aware, offered any sort of negotiation that doesn't involve taking vast swaths of Ukraine. Well, that was the thing with the Minsk agreements, though, deletion. That Minsk was supposed to prevent that from happening. Which, as Merkel admitted, they never had any intention of actually following. Like, there's been a war. Putin spent 10 years not invading Ukraine, despite this civil war backed by the West, backed by NATO, armed by NATO, against ethnic Russians in Ukraine. It's been going on for 10 years. Like, there was actually multiple efforts to try and stop this before it started, and apparently no one on our side certainly had any intention of ever following through with that. And this is the inevitable result. And as we've seen in Crimea, and as I think we've seen in some of these eastern regions in Ukraine, a lot of these regions are filled with ethnic Russians that actually don't want to have anything to do with Ukraine anymore. And like Ukraine, the right-wing nationalist Kiev government has made clear that they're not part of their culture. They're not part of their country. So like, why would the people that live in these regions where they're getting shelled by these NATO-backed militias for the last 10 years, why would they even want to be part of Ukraine anymore? Like, Ukraine has made it totally clear that they don't consider them a part of their country through their own actions. Like, that's what happens when the U.S. refuses to give countries territorial integrity and sovereignty. It's just global politics. Yeah, and it's just, I get so annoyed when people, like, literally people that should know better maintain this line, this completely fantasy land idea that what the United States and Canada and the rules-based international order is doing is promoting people's sovereignty and democracy. It's just so childish. To add to your good answer, the Minsk agreements were meant to keep Ukraine unified and have a place for the ethnically Russian Ukrainians. Putin wanted the Donbass to reunify with the rest of Ukraine. This is the kind of the whole thing. When people make this kind of argument, I don't mean to single you out, deletion. I don't mean to single you out. But when people make this argument that's like, well, you can't just say like, well, they just want to take over this big parts of Ukraine now. You can't just give them that. But it's like, they literally have spent 10 years not doing that. and like going to dramatic lengths to try and avoid that exact outcome. And see, I don't agree with what you're saying, Deletion, when you say Putin has been radicalized by Dugin. Like you're correctly pointing out, he did want to join NATO. Hasn't Putin, though, in that, if that is your analysis, hasn't he been radicalized by NATO and by the United States? As I've talked about on the show a number of times, Putin, as you point out, was a neoliberal, profited and benefited from the collapse of the Soviet Union, and tried to become part of the club, tried to become part of our special little club, wanted to join NATO. They gave up socialism and Putin benefited from that. And Putin said, okay, well, can we be part of your club now? And what did we say? No, you can't. No, you can't be part of our special little club. And we're going to continue actually expanding NATO, which was supposed to be an anti-Soviet alliance. Even after the Soviet Union is gone, we're going to continue expanding NATO directly up to your borders. You know, that's not Dugin. That's like, I don't even know, like, you know, that's just like I think a reaction to how Russia has been treated by these political forces. And see, this is the difference with the kind of analysis that I'm trying to articulate here. This is the difference from the like LaRouchites and like the so-called, these reactionary so-called anti-imperialists like Jackson Hinkle, who are just like Putin good, right? And that's the extent of their analysis, which is not, I don't think that's a dialectical analysis in the exact same way I don't think Putin bad is a dialectical analysis. Like, we have to understand the actual forces that have led to this point. Like, this is so fucking disturbing, this story. Sorry, just one moment. Having a weird kind of medical moment here. It's got a bad ringing in my right ear, kind of bout of dizziness. It's passing right now. Don't know what's going on with that. I think I'm being maybe hit with the Havana syndrome ray, possibly. The deep state coming after the stream again. I wanted to point this out as well. Have you had your caffeine? Evidently not enough. I had a coffee this morning, Sin Chow, and I had my Diet Coke. Evidently not enough. This story is so disturbing. This is from the New York Times. And again, this is what people have been supporting. And this is exactly why, no matter what reactionary weirdos or cultists or libertarians get involved with this, I'm going to maintain my same analysis that I've had on this before the invasion started, after it started, while it was going on, and today. Like, this is so fucking disturbing, this story. A Ukrainian married couple given a mere day and a half training to be thrown into the front lines to be killed by Russian artillery. I was really worried about Olha, Lyudmila said. If she went, it would be harder for TRRS. I would have had to protect her, but I didn't know how to stop her. They got some firearms training for 1.5 days, Mr. Belus said. Then they deployed to a pine forest near the city of Syeverodonetsk, where they were supposed to be the second or even third line of defense. The unit's commander, Captain Volodymyr Kanchuk, said, with so many professional soldiers killed, they were pushed all the way forward to what is called the zero line. Olha was the only woman in the unit. Their mission was to hold a trench and keep the Russians from advancing, but the Russians were shelling the area so hard that by mid-June, the 80-person combat unit had, because of desertions, casualties, and other problems, been cut down to 25. The blows absorbed here are like internal injuries. On the surface, Kropyvnytsky, a city of 230,000 people surrounded by vast wheat fields, looks untouched. There are no boarded up windows, blown out buildings, or soldiers crunching behind sandbags. Even the Russians aren't interested in us, one woman at a store recently joked. But everyone here seems to know someone who died. It's as if a long, thin nerve connects this city in the center of Ukraine and so many others like it to the bloodshed along the inflamed front line. The city's military cemetery won't stop growing. Nearly every day another coffin slipped into the cold black soil. Each grave is marked by a mound, a cross, a flag, and a framed portrait. The gallery of faces stares back in silence. Scores of young men and exactly one young woman cut down in their prime. And I just think it's so sick that this is what people have supported. And people have people even going on Twitch like fucking Dylan Burns, who I've beefed with over this shit, showing off their Azov tattoos and putting Ukraine flags in their bios and supporting this and taking on these fucking bullshit, ironic, trollish stances, saying you're like a NATO anarchist or whatever the fuck it is these fucking weirdos are doing. And this is what they've been supporting while simultaneously wagging their fingers at everyone who's against this, calling them Russian propagandists or Putinists or Duganists, or you support Russia's genocidal war of imperialism or whatever it is, whatever the line is. And this is what they've supported. This is what they've supported. This is what all of that I Stand With Ukraine movement has supported. Literally just dropping people into a fucking meat grinder for no reason. It's never had to happen. This never had to happen. Wearing a Saint Javelin shirt. Yeah, or convincing yourself that you're some kind of heroic gonzo war journalist. Or you're like fucking Hunter S. Thompson, who never would have used his platform to support NATO and support American imperialism, which is what you do if you support the endless arming of Ukraine. I just think it's really sad. It's really sad that this is what there's fucking children being conscripted into this. People that have nothing to do with this, that are not soldiers, are just being dropped into this meat grinder for no reason. Deletion. I guess you must be kind of new in this community. 3-month subscriber. Is the chat really taking the stance that Putin had to invade Ukraine? Just so I'm clear to hear. My analysis of this has been since before this invasion happened. Listen, I'm against war. I don't want to speak for people in the chat. I want there to be peace. I think this invasion never should have happened in the first place. The question is, it's not a yes or no thing. And yes, 2 thoughts in your head are okay. We know for a fact, okay? We know for an absolute fact that the CIA, Canadian intelligence, the U.S. military establishment have been arming and training these militia groups in eastern Ukraine now for over the last 10 years, including open fascists. I mean, many of whom, even if they aren't open fascist, do support this right-wing Ukrainian nationalism, Banderites, etc. And they support the really rehabilitation of these Holocaust perpetrating fascists like Bandera. Okay, that's a big part of their sort of nationalist project. Canada's been a big part of building that. So we know that that's been going on. We know for a fact that NATO has been expanding directly up to Russia's border for decades, which they've clearly indicated time and time again they consider a threat to their sovereignty. My point before the whole thing started, my point to this day remains that any country would consider what has been going on in eastern Ukraine and through the expansion of NATO to be a legitimate threat to their security. Any nation in the world. So you can be against war, you can be against invasions happening where clearly horrible, awful things happen. But what we do have to acknowledge, though, is our own role in creating that situation. And not take this one-sided black and white view that Russia bad or Russia good. But that Russia, with this invasion, was responding to legitimate threats to their sovereignty and security. And you have to acknowledge that this is a war. It's a proxy war. It's not a war that Russia is waging on the innocent people of Ukraine. It is a proxy war where the America, NATO, these Western countries are using Ukrainian proxies to fight Russia, who they consider to be their enemy. And I think that's Russia's viewpoint. That's NATO's viewpoint, and that's Russia's viewpoint. Russia doesn't view this as an invasion against innocent Ukrainian civilians. They consider it a war against NATO, which is like, you can kind of understand that perspective considering there's been a nonstop flow of arms from the NATO countries into Ukraine to fight this conflict. That's the analysis. As an American, I focus most of my critiques on America and its role in creating and prolonging the war. And as a Canadian, I agree, because Canada has played a significant role in creating the situation and promoting this conflict and prolonging it. And it goes back so much further with NATO, Operation Gladio, the Monroe Doctrine, and the rest of the Cold War disrupting the Soviet Union. I don't think that a Putin would have been allowed to surface without that. As I talked about a couple months ago, Matron's Militia, before this whole thing started with Vijay Prashad, talked about Putin himself. How Putin is like, the reason Putin's in power in the first place is because of the decade of humiliation that Russia endured after they gave up socialism to be accepted into the West. And there was no Marshall Plan. There was no bailout for people in Russia that gave up socialism. They just lost and they were humiliated. And it was a human rights disaster. And yeah, that leaves a space for people like Putin to come along and take that very real anger that people feel towards NATO, towards America, for the violence that was inflicted upon them, and to say, I am going to restore our national dignity. That's exactly why Putin's a popular figure. So, I mean, if your takeaway from that is like, Putin good, Russia was correct to do this, that's not, I don't think that should be the takeaway. But you have to acknowledge that this is not like a black and white situation where it's this, what's the line that they say in the media every single time? It's the illegal, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. That's the childish version of this event that's completely untethered from reality, the actual reality in the context of how this all started. Like I was mentioning, there were peace talks with the Minsk agreements. Those peace talks weren't sabotaged by Russia. They were sabotaged by the United States of America and their Ukrainian proxies. Like I've been pointing out, like there's a direct, even if you want to take this viewpoint that what happened in 2014 with the Euromaidan wasn't a coup, which it was, even if you want to take that viewpoint though, you just have a simple timeline of the Ukrainian government prior to the Euromaidan wanting to make a deal with Russia instead of the IMF, versus then there's immediately this color revolution that takes out the government. Then you have, which the United States is directly implicated in, you have American politicians showing up at the protests. You have phone calls from from Victoria Nuland and others openly talking about who's going to take over control of the government. 2 years later, you have video footage of John McCain and Lindsey Graham and Amy Klobuchar hanging out with these Ukrainian militias being like, we'll get you all the arms and weight that you need. We'll give you whatever you need as long as you fight the Russians. You have the Minsk agreements, which were sabotaged by the West, as Merkel clearly outlined. And then you have this invasion. Like there's a very clear line that you can just follow the events of. And we have to be able to acknowledge that. Your history and analysis of the war can't start in March when the invasion kicked off. No, and Red Scary, like I still see people saying like, well, what about What about the Russian buildup on the border, like prior to this invasion starting, when there was all these warnings about what was about to happen, saying that like the military buildup on the border on the part of Russia was like the event that kicked this thing off, and not talking about the military buildup happening on their border on multiple fronts that's been going on for decades, completely leaving out that context. You know, it does not make sense. This is all a little something known as dialectical and historical materialism. Look at this shit. They're fucking kids.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Uphold dialectical babushka thought.
Marina, thank you very much for the 16 months, tier 1. Thank you, Marina. I appreciate it. And I agree. We need to uphold babushka thought. That's true. Yeah, this is just fucking disturbing. And there's footage of people being like taken against their will to go join the military. It's fucking disturbing. Yeah, look at this, like this type of shit. Like, this is horrifying. And this is what people would rather have than a negotiation. Like, this is fucking awful. This is from Odessa. Fucking awful.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Even more like an IDF video. That's very true. Thank you to our friend, valued community member, Fart Party 69, for the 12 months of tier 1. Thank you very much to Fart Party 69 for that. And again, we watched this clip the other day, but I think it's worth talking about again. When you talk about this historical context, and you see people even in the Pentagon have no answer to this. And like, I don't even know if they have an understanding of it. I think it's worth watching this clip again. This from heroic journalist John Kirby, one of the only actual journalists in the entire United States with a mainstream platform.
To look at this and say the reason that the Russian army is on NATO, the Russian army is at NATO's doorstep is because NATO has expanded rather than the Russians expanding. That, in other words, NATO has moved closer to Russia rather than Russia moving closer to NATO. Is that not an accurate way to look at this?
I think that's the way President Putin probably looks at it. It's certainly not the way that we look at it.
You don't think that NATO has expanded eastward toward Russia?
NATO has expanded,
Okay.
and the expansion has been a good thing for.
So the reason that the Russian army is at NATO's doorstep is not the fault of the Russian army, it's not the Russian army.
This is what happens when you confront an American military guy with just basic facts about recent history. Look at his face. He doesn't even know. First of all, he's like, what are these journalists like asking me serious questions about this? Like, this is how these people react. Yeah, just immediately calling him a Putinist. But to his credit, he does not give up.
That's done it. It's NATO has moved closer to
I'm pretty
east.
sure it wasn't NATO who was ordering, upwards of 15 battalion tactical groups to within 10 kilometers of the border with Ukraine, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't NATO.
Yeah, what happened before that, though, sir?
Inside Ukraine
What happened before that?
Eastern
I'm pretty
states.
sure that Ukraine is not a member of NATO. So unless that's changed,
It's not
Okay.
changed, but I'm
So,
pretty sure the movement by Russia is Russia's decision.
if NATO has moved east, the reason that the Russian army is closer or on NATO's doorstep is because NATO moved, not
NATO
because
is not an anti-Russia alliance. NATO
It
is
is,
a
sir.
security alliance.
Unfortunately, for 50 years it was an
Sir.
anti-Soviet alliance. So
Where's
do you
the
not
Soviet
understand
Union
it? So do you not understand how?
It's a good question, though. Where is the Soviet Union? And if it wasn't just an anti-Russian alliance, why didn't Russia join NATO after the Soviet Union, after they gave up socialism to appease their imperialist opponents? That kind of gives the game away right there. What's the purpose of NATO anymore?
Can you not even see how the Russians would perceive it as a threat? And the fact that it keeps getting closer to their border, while their troops, I mean, the places where their troops are, you say their troops are, and may have been in Ukraine and
I'll link the video here. It's really fascinating, isn't it?
Georgia, are not NATO members.
I'm not going to pretend to know what goes in President Putin's mind or Russian military commanders.
He doesn't even know.
I barely got a history degree at the University of South Florida. What I can tell you is
He's with
that-
the AP,
is
Red
that,
Scary.
NATO is a defensive alliance. It remains a defensive alliance.
Bullshit.
Has moved east, correct?
Baby
that's
brain.
just a
It has
fact.
expanded, absolutely.
Right, exactly.
But
And so
there's
the
no reason
reason-
for anybody to think the expansion is a hostile or threatening move. And we've been saying that throughout the last 15
Preposterous.
years, man.
Like you're moving closer to Russia. You're
Absolutely
blaming the Russians for
absolutely
being close to
preposterous.
NATO.
Just because we were expanding our defensive alliance right up to their borders, there's no reason for anyone to think that we had hostile intent. Like, it's just a fucking joke. The expansion of our military alliance is not threatening. America famously would treat a similar circumstance, I'm sure, with the exact same level of nuance. If China or whoever else was expanding directly up to their borders, which is something that I hope actually happens. As far as Ukrainian demands go, Zelensky's insistence on the return of Crimea exists with the sole purpose of being a roadblock toward negotiation in the same manner as Israel's two-state solution, except the status quo for him is that his own generals won't blow his brains out and take over. Like, just the idea that now they're sticking on that and suggesting that Russia's the country that's not negotiating. Because one of their main demands is that Crimea be returned to Ukraine, which is just not ever going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Yet another Khrushchev giving Ukraine Crimea in the first place. Absolutely. This journalist also often pins them down over Israel's support. Well, it's good to know that there's actually some journalists that ask these basic questions. I don't think they have enough platforms. Remember, they blew up the bridge too. We only talk about Nord Stream now, but they blew up the Crimean bridge to Russia too. Yeah, and civilians were incinerated in that attack, as we covered on this program, and people were just celebrating it. They're Russian civilians though, so what does it matter? Right? This vital infrastructure that Russia built, which Ukraine had not built. This bridge into Crimea. Yeah, we're going to destroy that, incinerate a bunch of civilians, and then we're going to all celebrate that. And then suggest that when there's a retaliation, that's somehow like the other side being aggressive and not us. I'm not doing this. Marianne Williamson gave a terrible response to Jordan Charlton. Total denial of our role in the situation and that our funding is not in balance with the funding at home. I mean, and that's the thing. The total abdication of responsibility from people like that, from Marianne Williamson to people in the squad who are supposed to be like, have decent foreign policy views. And then what do when they completely deny this context? When they deny America's role in creating the situation and perpetuating it, when they vote for and support this nonstop flow of arms into Ukraine, then they open the door for libertarians and these LaRoucheite cultists and these reactionaries to make these anti-war arguments, which are going to be very appealing to people because that's a popular sentiment.
Пане президенте, шановні пані та панове журналісти,
This is from
шановні
today.
присутні, шановна команда президента Байдена. Радий вас всіх вітати в Україні. Для мене і для всіх нас велика честь. Щойно ми провели переговори з паном президентом Сполучених Штатів Америки в форматі тет-а-тет, а потім в розширеному форматі. Це була розмова, яка дійсно наближає нашу спільну перемогу в цій війні. Ми можемо і маємо зробити так, щоб саме цей рік, 23-й, став роком перемоги. І я хочу підкреслити, ця неспровокована і злочинна російська війна проти України, всієї Європи та демократичного світу має завершитись очищенням всієї української землі від окупації Росії та твердими гарантіями довготривалої безпеки, як нашої держави, так і усієї Європи і всього світу.
Pork Funker, what country do you live in? Quick question for you. What country do you live in? Potential new community member, Pork Funker.
Саме зараз і саме в Україні вирішується доля міжнародного порядку, заснованого на правилах The Rules-Based World Order. І ми разом з паном президентом Байденом, з нашими союзниками, з нашими союзними партнерами маємо і надалі робити абсолютно все можливе, щоб
From the US, okay. Say no more.
демократичний світ виграв у цій історичній битві.
We united the leading economies of the world to impose unprecedented costs that are squeezing Russia's economic lifelines.
By the way, the opposite of this is true. Like when Biden talks about this, how Russia's economy has been isolated, literally the exact opposite is true. All the sanctions, the most historic sanctions regime that we've seen in decades failed to do anything. Failed to accomplish its goals. And it's in fact the US, which is more isolated than ever, as this whole conflict has accelerated the sort of global realignment that's happened and this de-dollarization process that's been happening.
Together, we've committed nearly 700 tanks and thousands of armored vehicles, 1,000 artillery systems.
But you're a tanky if you're against
more than
this.
2 million rounds of artillery ammunition, more than 50 advanced launch rocket systems, anti-ship and air defense systems, all defend Ukraine, and that doesn't count the other $500 million we're announcing with you today and tomorrow. That's going to be coming your way, and that's just the United States.
Hey, take care, Pork Funker. Good to have you. Good to have you in the chat today.
That announcement includes artillery ammunition for HIMARS and howitzers, more javelins, anti-armor systems, air surveillance radars to help protect Ukrainian people.
But remember, when Putin views this, or when Russia views this as being like a fundamental conflict that's protecting their own sovereignty, whether you agree with that or not, but when they view this as a conflict against NATO, not a conflict against Ukraine, how is this not just proving that exact position to be true when they're talking about this endless supply of arms that NATO has given Ukraine to fight this conflict? How is that not a proxy war? Like, that's what I want to... People say, you say proxy war. People say, no, that's not what it is. How? But like, literally how? How is it not? When you have the president of the United States just going, we've sent tanks, we sent javelins. How many hundreds of billions have they spent on this? Like, I've lost count. I've lost count of this, of the hundreds of billions of dollars worth of arms and training that they've given this country to contribute to this war. You know, how is that? That's the definition of a proxy war. You know, when NATO is unequivocally financing and supplying one side of a conflict, how is it not accurate that Russia believes that they're fighting a conflict against NATO? You know, it's preposterous.
From aerial bombardments. Later this week, we will announce additional sanctions against elites and companies that are trying to evade sanctions and backfill Russia's war machine. And thanks to bipartisan support in Congress, this week we're delivering billions in direct budgetary support, which the government can put to use immediately and help provide for basic services of citizens. The cost that Ukraine has had to bear,
Claire Daly was pointing out, like, they're paying, that's a loan. That is a loan that they're going to pay back over the decades as they're completely, like, economically subservient to the US and the IMF.
Extraordinarily high.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Oh my goodness. Anonymous gifter. Thank you very much for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
It's going to play 5 times too because of the anonymous gift. Let's let it roll.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
A secret not a secret grifter, a secret gifter. That's right. The most Christ-like.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
The most Christ-like of all gifters, sub-gifters. They don't want the recognition.
You can count on me. Gifters. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
They don't want the shout-outs. They just want to support the content. And for that, we salute them. Thank you very, very much, Anonymous Gifter, for the 5 gifted subs.
Far too great. They've been met, but they've been far too
Pork
great.
Funker was swayed by our arguments. There we go.
mourn alongside the families of those who've been lost to the brutal and unjust war. We know that there'll be very difficult days and weeks and years ahead. But Russia's aim was to wipe Ukraine off the map. Putin's war of conquest
actually very specifically
is failing.
said, like, Putin very specifically said, and again, you don't have to like the guy, very specifically said at the very beginning of this conflict, we have no intention of occupying Kiev. They literally said, like, no, we don't want to just like take over all of Ukraine. Like, they specifically said that. But okay, does sound more sleepy than usual. Yeah, enthusiastic Iraq war supporter Biden lecturing about this.
Young, talented Russians are fleeing by the tens of thousands, not wanting to come back to Russia. Not just fleeing from the military, fleeing from Russia itself. Because they
as
see
Ukraine
no
is putting out propaganda videos of like fucking 16-year-olds firing artillery shells.
We're going to be with you, Mr. President, for as long as it takes.
We'll do it.
Thank you.
Anyway, we can and should be against the war in Ukraine, the endless arming and training that's been getting sent to Ukraine. We need to be against the imperialist war machine, absolutely, but we don't need to be libertarians or LaRoucheite cultists in order to do that. I'm going to take just a brief moment now. I'm going to take a brief moment. I think after we come back, I would like to dive a little bit further into this LaRouche stuff so we can kind of understand what this LaRoucheite business is all about. But before I do, folks, I would like to take this little moment to reach out to the lurkers, the new viewers that have tuned in today, that are maybe a little bit curious about this community and what it's about. We looked at this earlier, but in case you were not around for that, I did prepare a little video presentation to explain what this community is about. And I'm going to take a little break now and we'll show this video that I created to educate people about what the TRRS community is about. And hopefully we can get a couple more subs. Hopefully we can make the number go up a little bit more. And I think when you see this presentation, you'll know exactly what the community is about, and you're going to realize that it's something that you want, nay, need to be a part of. Okay? So here it is.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional...
I'm going to try this one more time. Not seamless, okay? Here it is. Here it is once again. If you're curious about what this community is about or whether you should be a part of it, this video is for you. Here you go.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down clout, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult. Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community.
It's not, unlike, we're going to look into the LaRoucheite stuff. Unlike that, though, it is not a cult. It is not a cult. Very important to point that out. So please, folks, if you can, if you want to be part of this community, if you want to support this content, please subscribe or gift subs. Help me make the number go up. That's what keeps this community alive. That's what keeps this content on the air. I know it appeals to me as well. Time for some whiz-biz. No land bridge needed in the good old Friendship Triangle. That's right. Not needed at all. Speaking of cults, unlike us, which we are not, very specifically not. LaRouche only likes cults, and as you can see, he's not subbed to Rob, ergo not a cult. Exactly. The logic is just flawless. I'm going to let this ride for a couple minutes. I'm going to take a little break, get up, stretch my legs, go to the bathroom. Hopefully we can bring in some more subs with this informative advertisement that I put together for the community. Should I pay to like promote this? Like imagine if you were just randomly on Facebook and you saw this. You know? I feel like it's the kind of thing that might just get people to just check it out. It's so weird and bizarre. Yeah, cheaper to advertise on Twitter. I'm not paying Elon though. I'm gonna put it on TikTok. I will do that. Absolutely. Anyway, I'm just gonna go for a few minutes. I'll leave this running. Please subscribe to the channel though. Please help me make the number go up. Please support the content that I do and this community. It's very, very helpful and I appreciate it a lot. I'll be back in a couple minutes.
We would thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down cloud, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team.
Count on me. You're gonna have
We
a
are
good old
always here
Rob
to support our
talk
members
through all
and
this.
ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult. Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down cloud, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult. Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down cloud, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult.
Thank you to Dummy Dorko and Sophisticated Pills for the gifted subs. Thank you to you both. Thank you. I don't know where at the welcome of this video. I don't know where out the welcome. I can't just play it too much. It is very good to just have in the background when I'm talking now, even without the soundtrack. I'm just heating up some water so I can have some noodles. I went grocery shopping today and I got a bunch of new cups of noodles.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
The more I watch it, the more I agree that it's not a cult. Thank you, Red Scary. And thank you, Ben Imps. Or Ben. Ben. Thank you, Ben, for the gifted sub to TV Tray. Thank you. Yeah, I went grocery shopping today. I got a bunch of new noodles. New noodle cups to munch on. Just heating that up. And then I think when we come back, we'll look more into this like LaRoucheite business. New noodles just dropped. I'll show you the ones that I'm going to eat right now. These are quite good. I got a bunch of like Shin ramen kind, but I've been enjoying this lately. It's these like Thai red curry rice noodles. It's quite good. It gets like a nice kind of satisfying thickness to it once you mix it all together. Very tasty. Very, very tasty. Green curry, also very good. I can't find any cups of that, but I do often get that when I order Thai food. Isn't there something like where the Thai government like spends lots of money on supporting Thai restaurants? That's why in like every random town there's always a Thai restaurant, because the Thai government literally like puts lots of resources into like supporting Thai restaurants around the world, which is fair because it's excellent food. I mean, that's certainly a way better of doing that kind of soft power than building military bases or whatever. What I want is a Vietnamese restaurant. There are a number of very good Vietnamese places in Montreal. Yeah, I read a story about this. I'm not making this up. Culinary diplomacy. Hold on, I hear my water boiling. I'll be right back. I love Vietnamese food as well. Always love getting a nice pho. In fact, I haven't been to my favorite Vietnamese restaurant in many years, and now I kind of want to go back. I love getting that pho with like the tripe and all that stuff in it. That scares a lot of people away. I enjoy it though. I like it a lot. The rare beef, you get that rare beef and all the tripe and all that different stuff in there. And the broth. Oh, the broth. The broth is just so good. It's so fucking good. C'est délicieux, Carlis. But yeah, I guess the Thai government there are an estimated 5,342 Thai restaurants in the United States, compared to around 54,000 Mexican restaurants. That's 10 times the population to restaurant ratio. Using a tactic now known as gastro-diplomacy or culinary diplomacy, the government of Thailand has intentionally bolstered the presence of Thai cuisine outside of Thailand to increase its export and tourism revenues, as well as prominence on the cultural and diplomatic stages. In 2001, the Thai government established the Global Thai Restaurant Company Limited in an effort to establish at least 3,000 Thai restaurants worldwide. Anyway, it makes sense because it's delicious food. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, if this worked, we would be pro-China. That's right. Well, and that's where the propaganda comes in. It's like you can promote your culture or your country through this kind of culinary diplomacy, but once the propaganda machine turns its focus onto you, it's not going to do all that much good. Americans will simultaneously enjoy their General Tao chicken and a new Cold War against China. Talk about holding two ideas in their minds at the same time. Now I'm starving as well. I'm glad I just got these noodles. I wasn't sure about whether to make them. Now I feel good about it. I still think it's good as well, Sin Chao, as you know. I'm trying to find something interesting to watch on this LaRouche stuff. I think maybe, though, the Rev Left radio episode is probably the best bet. I think this is probably the way to go if we want to inform ourselves on this. And I can put on some kind of video Okay, so this seems like the best bet. Bigger wig. Thank you. Aren't a lot of the Chinese and Vietnamese restaurants in America run by anti-communist expat families? That's probably a good point as well. And that's why we know that it's not part of some kind of like gastro diplomacy. It's just the fact that we have this reactionary sort of immigration policy that doesn't allow socialists to come to immigrate to our countries. So those are our expat communities for a lot of these groups. I think we got enough time for this. How long is this clip? How long is this episode? An hour 45. Ooh, shit. That may be a little ambitious. This might have to be a two-parter. I don't know. It's the same story with any diaspora in America. Immediate indoctrination to reactionary politics in the left in their country and in the U.S. Well, it's exactly the story with the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada and elsewhere, right? It's the exact same story. Let's get into this, okay? Maybe it'll be a two-parter. We'll see how much we can cover today. What I got about another... Realistically, I could be here for like another hour and a half, so... Shit. But we talked about that Rage Against the War Machine rally and the involvement of these kind of LaRoucheite cultists in this sort of reactionary, libertarian, anti-war movement. So I think it's only worthwhile, if we're going to talk about the involvement of these folks in this community, that we really do a deeper dive into what these people are about and who they are. Like we talked about, I saw that clip the other day about China's economy. It's like it's tricky because these people put out stuff that I think is worthwhile to listen to. But we need to understand what their goals are and what their values are before we go lecturing everyone about why we need to like make alliances with them. And here's the link.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Rev Left Radio. On today's episode, I have on Donald Parkinson from Cosmonaut Magazine to talk about the historical figure known as Lyndon LaRouche. This was a person who ostensibly started off on the left as a Trotskyist, and over time created an organization that became increasingly Rectorist, increasingly cultist, and then ultimately explicitly reactionary and right-wing. And so Donald and I kind of trace the trajectory of LaRouche's political career and his organization, and we draw lessons on it for today, because today in the left-wing socialist ecosystem, if you will, we're increasingly seeing this attempt by some revisionist MLs, I guess, to try to do many of the same things that Lyndon LaRouche and his organization tried to do, decades ago. This embrace of chauvinism, this embrace of patriotism, this tailing conservative social views, this sort of reductionist, economistic workerism. It's all kind of here. And I think it's an incredibly important historical lesson for the left to learn today. A bit more balance here. Because if you've been on the left for the last several years, you've actually probably seen left-wing cults emerge. And so, as I
not like this one, though. That's not one of those cases, as we all know.
Mentioned in this episode, it's absolutely fascinating
to
go back throughout history to see left-wing cults in the past, and then to live through a period of time in which you can watch in real time as they emerge,
Check.
spin
Is that
out,
better?
and dissolve in various ways. And so it's a fascinating and timely and important discussion. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Donald Parkinson on Lyndon LaRouche. Enjoy.
Imagine being indoctrinated into a left-wing cult. Absolutely embarrassing. Embarrassing behavior. Honestly. Could not be me. Now Sinshaw's saying, please stop turning it down. I had to have some kind of a balance between the mic and the clip, though. Try this. I just like triangles. We're just friends, okay? It's a community of friendship. There's nothing wrong with that.
Hey, I'm Donald Parkinson. You may know me from my previous appearances on Rev Left Radio, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Cosmonaut Mag, and I guess you could call me an independent researcher of history and Marxism.
Yeah, well, welcome back. It's always a pleasure and an honor to speak with you and to learn from you. You and I have been trying to, figure out a topic to collaborate on for a while, and this finally kind of, hit our schedules both such that we could make it happen. So today we'll be talking about Lyndon LaRouche. And this is a really fascinating character that I've certainly heard about, but as I was telling Donald before we started recording, I've never personally invested the time and energy into kind of learning about him. Just he's sort of a fringe figure that I was aware of and kind of knew the gist of what he was and what he represented, but never really, appealed to me enough to dive into it. But after going back and forth with Donald and prepping for this episode, I found it to be absolutely a crazy story. Like reading some of these articles, I just like break out laughing in my bedroom. Like, what the fuck? It's quite a strange tale.
Right. It's those things where it's like an onion. You keep peeling it and finding crazy stuff and peeling it more and finding even crazier stuff. And, it's when are you going to get to the core and find like, the kind of reason to all the insanity.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you just keep going deeper and deeper and it gets crazier and crazier with LaRouche.
Yeah, it really is quite the story. So today we're going to bring you that story. And Donald, before we get into the questions, what got you interested in this, and why did you wrote an article for Cosmonaut magazine on him a few years back. So what was kind of the way you got into being interested in him?
Oh, okay. So back in the day, I knew a guy named Warren Goldner who was he was an old veteran of the New Left, and he kind of was a kind of left communist guy. And he had a website that I really liked reading. He had like a lot of really good like articles on Marxist theory. And I was kind of like moving from anarchism to Marxism at this point. And I found out that Warren Goldner, when he was younger, was part of a group called the National Caucus of Labor Committees. And that he had left the group before they had what was called like an infamous Operation Mop-Up. And so I decided that, I wanted to kind of read more about this group and figure out what they were all about. And like why, this guy was so embarrassed to like mention that he had been part of them. And I had also kind of come across Lyndon LaRouche through like,
I saw the Dollop did an episode as well.
I've always been interested in fringe movements and just bizarre esoteric stuff. I don't know how to justify it, but I kind of just knew about him through the various conspiracy theories that had kind of seeped into popular culture from him. So this was like maybe like 7 years ago. I was looking into the National Caucus of Labor Committees, which was LaRouche's group. And I found it fascinating because it was an example of a group that started out, but was, they started out as what, from all appearances, seemed like a pretty orthodox Marxist group. Like, in fact, they kind of like made their claim to fame around being like more orthodox than like other Marxists of the New Left era. But they seemingly just quickly transformed into what is, pretty much undeniably a far-right organization. But I was also interested in the fact that it seemed like a lot of their ideas from like their left-wing era when they started as Marxists kind of like still existed in modified forms when they became a right-wing group. And so I was kind of fascinated by how a group could go from being Marxist to becoming essentially what some people say are fascists.
It's
like
that
there's a
Trotskyist pipeline.
there's a lot of people who think that Lyndon LaRouche is basically a Americanized version of like Mussolini style fascism or even Hitler style fascism. And so the way that this group made this transition itself was interesting to me. And so when LaRouche died in 2019, he was already on my radar. So I wrote an article called LaRouche, A Warning for Us All, which was essentially a kind of warning about how like culty, sectarian, and authoritarian dynamics in leftist groups can essentially create the most ludicrous types of revisionism, I guess, and decline into just total far-right cultish crankery. And so I want to avoid that. That's one thing I've noticed is like a lot of leftist groups often develop these kind of culty tendencies. And so I wanted to kind of, maybe investigate how like the kind of sectarian approach of LaRouche to Marxism kind of was set him on the road to become this kind of far-right cult leader. So I wrote that article for Cosmonaut, and I kind of thought LaRouche at this point was just like his organization was still around. They'll even be like I've even seen them like tabling in Florida where I live. Like they're all over the place. But I kind of thought that they were just kind of declining into like a pure crank sect, and there was all kind of slowly die off. But recently there's been online and in various Marxist-Leninist spaces, there's been what I can only describe as a kind of revival of LaRouche's ideas. And I don't mean to say that like all Marxist-Leninists are guilty of this. Like I think the majority aren't. But there definitely
for
has
sure,
been
Leninists. That's where the dark MAGA,
like Maupin,
MAGA communists, Pat Socks,
to basically like bring LaRouchian ideas into the left and to kind of fuse them with Marxism, Leninism. And increasingly, some of these
this is from October of 22,
more and more
so
attention in the media. Like that Jackson Hinkle guy was on Tucker Carlson.
Less than a year ago,
was on Chinese TV recently. And so in the world, like, we already are part of like a world of fringe politics as Marxists. Like, yes, socialism is a little less fringe in the United States, but it's still like, actual like Marxism, I still say is like pretty much fringe.
It is
so
a big
it's
L
easy
for
to
CGTN,
kind of say
absolutely.
like, oh, this is just fringe, like crank stuff, and it's not really relevant. But like in the world of the left, like these kind of things are relevant because they can have, they can punch above their weight in influencing like the left and the small groups. And I think that this kind of rise of LaRoucheism in the modern left that I've seen, I think it's something that should be combated. And I think, and so part of why I want to do this episode is just kind of to spread the word about the real purpose and meaning of these ideas, and and that they're not at all something that we should be like trying to combine with Marxism, and that this is a nefarious group whose own intentions are not in line with those of principled Marxists.
Yeah. Amen. I agree with everything you're saying, and I also believe that it's our duty to combat this rising strain of reaction masquerading as Marxism and claiming to speak on behalf of Marxism, claiming to be the true purveyors of Marxism, and everybody who doesn't agree with their chauvinist takes or their settler nationalism or whatever it may be are fake Marxists or psyops or whatever. The conspiratorialism is there, the reaction is there, the sense of superiority and we are the true carriers of Marxism are there, even though in our current state, a lot of these people seem to have discovered communism within the last year or two. Certainly many of the fans of these egomaniacs and these people that are popping up on the ML left. But you said something in this article, which I really highly recommend if you want to know
hot.
Of who LaRouche was. Is your article in Cosmonaut, which I'll link in the show notes here, but I'm just going to quote a little bit from it because it's obviously talking about LaRouche and his little crew. But
onto this sick individual, and I found this.
Hello, Majority Report Raiders, bring it on in here. Sam Sater, what a fucking nightmare. The most terrifying man in the independent progressive media world. That's Sam Sater, the dangerous individual. Thank you very much for the raid, Majority Report. Welcome. We were talking about the Rage Against the War Machine rally that took place over the weekend. And we're talking a little bit about the LaRoucheites, because the LaRoucheites are deeply implicated in creating this kind of like anti-war movement, but shepherding people into this like path of reaction and saying things that I think are popular among the anti-war movement, but bringing them in this kind of like dangerous direction. So we're learning a little bit now. We're listening to the episode of the podcast, Revolutionary Left Radio, learning about who these LaRouchites are and what the LaRouchite cult is all about. But one channel that's not a cult, folks, is this channel, TRRS. And if you're just joining us today and you want to know what this channel is about, before we can continue with the content, with the talking about LaRouche and the dangerous LaRouchite cult, I just want to give you a bit of an example video of what this community is about, and which I think that you should subscribe to and join. So I'm just going to briefly show this video. And unlike the LaRouchites, TRRS is not a cult. But I'm just going to show this brief video just so you understand what it's about.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down clout, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle.
Is that a thing,
That's why we
Praxid?
encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult.
See, it says right there in the copy. It says right there. The triangle is the natural shape for things to trickle. You can't get that from a cloud square. Obviously. Thank you, Lennon Smash. I did not know that, Praxid. That's very interesting. Very, very interesting stuff. Anyway, that's what the TRRS community is about, if you weren't sure. Let's continue this, though, because we don't have all day to look at this clip. Just wanted to make sure that people knew what they were getting here. Okay? That's all.
Applicable in the sort of, Pat Sock or reactionary, pseudo-Marxist, milieus that are existing today. So you say in the article, quote, LaRouche was able to stake himself out in the new left as the exception to the race-obsessed leftists who put a strong emphasis on anti-racism and third world liberation.
That sounds familiar.
The LaRouchites demonstrated a sort of
kind of
conservative
anti-woke
economism that would stay a central part of their ideology. Concessions to chauvinism became outright propagation of chauvinism as the organization developed.
Any of this sound familiar?
LaRouche's rejection of community control in favor of reactionary trade unionism distinguished the org from the beginning. And this is the last sentence that I'm going to read. The LaRouchites posed themselves as the mature leftists in comparison to the degenerates who made up the new left. And so this idea of mature leftist or true leftist versus degenerate leftist, and even the use of the term degenerate, in and of itself is something that's still here. The chauvinism, the dislike and the disdain of anti-racism struggles, or in the case of this newer crop, LGBTQ movements and activists. So I thought that was very interesting and very applicable to today. I just wanted to quote that, and I'll link to it in the article. Anything you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of, when I wrote that article, that was kind of like my point was like, the LaRouchians kind of embrace this almost like Leave It to Beaver style socialism where they would tell their followers to cut their hair, to not smoke grass, and to listen to Beethoven instead of rock music. And there was this kind of attempt to appeal to this idealized conservative worker, which you see a lot in the left today. Mm-hmm. And so, there was we can get into this more when we talk about the history of the early days of the LaRouche movement, but like I said, there was definitely like tendencies there that you could see, and you could see how they could lead to like outright chauvinism. And like, don't get me wrong, there is like an official anti-racist and like an official LGBT liberal ideology that communists do need to be critical of.
Yeah.
It's just that like when you throw the baby out with the bathwater and actually like embrace chauvinism.
And remember tying it together with the whole convoy thing, the trucker convoy, because I remember getting always lectured by these Pat socks about supporting the trucker movement. And this conflation of who counts as a worker and who doesn't, right? The blue-haired, they, them, Starbucks barista, well, they don't count as being a worker, according to these folks. You know? Or we need to abandon social justice, just because liberals kind of support it sometimes, like on this surface level analysis. We've got to abandon social justice. We've got to deny that racism exists in our society. We've got to join up with this like transphobic panic, this trans panic going on right now. So we appeal to the real workers, denying the fact that trans people are workers and black and brown and indigenous people are also workers. You know, or we can never support giving land back to indigenous people. We hear the same people making the same argument. You know, this anti-war rally from the weekend is the latest example of the way that these people are organizing around these principles, but they've been popping up more and more around a lot of these issues over the last couple of years.
Aim of like reaching the working class. That's obviously something that, you know, we can't tolerate. You know, it's just not what we're about.
Absolutely.
And I think LaRouche very quickly went down this road.
Is Patsock real? I mean,
so let's go ahead and zoom out now that we've
it's
kind of got
a new stupid thing.
set.
It's really just a
And
rebranding.
Just assume that there's some
like they
people
keep
out
on
there
going.
who have never even heard.
They keep going through this rebranding process because they don't want to be known as LaRoucheites. So they're Patsocks, they're MAGA communists. You know, whatever. They keep finding different sort of branding to describe what it is they're doing, but it's basically the same principle.
The name LaRouche. So for those that don't know, and kind of from a bird's eye view, can you just give us a quick sketch of who he was as a historical figure to kind of help orient our audience to the rest of the conversation?
Right. I'm going to kind of give the whole biography here. So basically, Lyndon LaRouche, you know, he wrote under the name Lynn Marcus at first. He was born in a far-right Quaker family. And his father was basically this paranoid, right-wing John Bircher type who was constantly accusing the rest of the Quaker community of being like communist agents, because Quakers have always like been involved in like the peace movement and stuff. And the LaRouche family were not, they were like right-wing, like pro-Cold Warrior kind of Quakers. And so, you know, his father was kind of like what he would become, was just like constantly accusing everyone of being like a communist shill and stuff. So, you know, LaRouche himself, you know, he kind of rebelled against his upbringing by becoming a Marxist. You know? So he's a Quaker. So he was a conscientious objector in World War II. And so he serves in the civilian public service. He gets bored with that, joins the army as a non-combatant, and he comes into contact with communists who are organizing within the army during World War II. And he, you know, gets turned on to the Das Kapital and starts getting into Marxism. And he works as a private and medical unit stationed in Calcutta. And there he makes connections with local communists. And it's a funny story. He actually suggests that they should stage an immediate uprising against the British colonial government. And they say, no, you're nuts. That's just ultra-leftism. Mm-hmm. So he kind of gets disappointed with like the official communist parties and gravitates towards Trotskyism. And you know, back home from the war, he joins the Socialist Workers' Party, which is the main Trotskyist party in the U.S. And Socialist Workers' Party, they're the kind of party that had their members like go work in factories and industrialize themselves essentially to recruit factory workers. But LaRouche just hated that. He didn't want to be a factory worker. He couldn't take the pressure of working like a kind of manual labor job. So he actually ends up working as a management consultant for corporations. And he has his own kind of management consulting firm. And this is actually interesting, like, because he kind of has like a first, like a really perfect view of how capitalism is actually working from the inside. So he does actually have some like knowledge about the actual like workings of modern corporations, which he kind of was able to use that knowledge to kind of make his Marxism like a bit more interesting and a bit more intellectually deep even. he was really interested in cybernetics, and he was interested in the idea of like using computer technology to like do planned economies and stuff, which is an interest I share.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of trying to like use his knowledge from being a business consultant to like modernize Marxism. And so they're actually he actually does kind of start out as like an interesting person. But when he's in the SWP, he's like a pretty minor character. He's not really like a big leader. He's mostly known for writing these long meandering bulletins that nobody read because they were just kind of just too out there for the average party member, I guess. He forms a 20-person split with another fellow Trotsky lord, and they come under the influence of this, was a particularly culty Trot group. I think they were implicated in a bunch of sex scandals and stuff later on in the 70s and 80s. And I think today the main continuer of that lineage is the World Socialist website / SEP people. But basically, like LaRouche kind of learns some of his later cult kind of techniques from the Socialist Labor League and Jerry Healy. He already had like a very like harsh and very authoritarian internal structure cult, and they use a lot of internal group, and they use a lot of kind of cult-like tactics to kind of get people to follow the central committee and devote a lot of time to stuff they normally wouldn't do. So there's already some kind of some of these like authoritarian, bureaucratic, centralist tendencies that LaRouche kind of learned from the Trotskyist movement. But he ends up, he basically, he's an egomaniac himself, and his little split ends up falling apart, and he goes off to do his own thing. And so this is like around 1967, with the New Left, and he starts teaching classes in Marxism at the New York City Free School. And he kind of rejects like a lot of what was trendy in the New Left. Like he wasn't really interested in, Che Guevara or Herbert Marcuse. He was interested in Rosa Luxemburg and Marxist Capital and German idealism. Like he was really interested in like going deep into Hegel and Kant and Leibniz and all these German idealist philosophers. And so he's very much like a figure that a lot of the more like theory-oriented Marxists in the New Left scene at Columbia kind of gravitate towards. And so, he builds up his reputation as this, this very intellectual and high-minded kind of Marxist theorist who's teaching Capital and Hegel to people. And so he kind of starts building up his own organization. And, this is the age of SDS. And at this time, SDS is, there's the Progressive Labor Party is working within SDS. And the Progressive Labor Party is, they were split from the Communist Party that at first like sided with China in the Sino-Soviet split. And so LaRouche is kind of like picking recruits from the Progressive Labor Party, because like one thing the Progressive Labor Party did was they did the whole thing of like sending their cadres to go work in the factories. And LaRouche, a lot of these college kids who were gravitating towards Progressive Labor Party, they didn't really want to do that. Mm-hmm. And so what LaRouche said was, well, you don't have to go spend your time working in the factory. What you need to do is spend time with me learning how to become the kind of intellectual elite that will be necessary for the future vanguard. And so he was able to like, appeal to a lot of the more like kind of middle-class intellectual Marxist types.
We're surrounded, Lenin Smash.
By kind of emphasizing the intellectual side of things. And so, yeah.
I think probably like 95% of what could be described as the Western left are trots who don't realize it.
It ends up building a kind of faction within SDS over time. And, in 1969, there's a big student strike at Columbia over the relation of the school to the Pentagon. And it is kind of like one of the biggest moments of the New Left. And LaRouche actually was able to kind of like make a name for himself as like a strike leader. And, apparently like all of his old comrades in the SWP were shocked when they saw LaRouche like speaking to large audiences of students and stuff, because they were just like, wait, like this guy, he didn't talk to anyone when he was in the SWP. Now he's like leading students. And so this is kind of where the National Caucus of Labor Committees is formed. This is his own organization of the New Left. And, it's like very much a kind of ultra centralized elitist organization. They develop this is, time period where a lot of people think revolution is imminent. there's a lot of people, like, you had the Revolutionary Union form out of SDS, who was seen by the FBI as a threat to national security. You have all kinds of black nationalist and Chicano liberation movements forming. And there really is a kind of a feeling that revolution is imminent in the U.S. at this time, or at least it's something that can be entertained. And so LaRouche has this whole thing that their little vanguard needs to, be able to prepare to lead the country through the revolution. And he kind of has this Trotskyist, Luxemburgist theory that there's going to be a wave of mass strikes, and the LaRouche, the NCLC is going to be able to kind of swoop in and provide their leadership to the workers. And, they really kind of developed this sectarian and ultra-centralist perspective, even though they're kind of they're anti-Stalinist and stuff. They're very critical of the Soviet Union, but they're also critical of Trotsky. And LaRouche claims we have gone beyond Trotskyism. So
at this point, they're not even identifying necessarily as Trotskyists, but they're still Marxist, socialist, whatever.
Yeah. LaRouche kind of he actually thought that it's interesting enough. One of the things that caused him to break with the SWP was that he wanted to have a united front with the mainstream communists or the Stalinists or whatever. So he was actually he was always more open towards working with those types and other Trotskyists, I guess, at first. Interesting. But yeah, he decides to move, basically officially move away from Trotskyism. It's really Rosa Luxemburg who they're all looking at and talking about.
Wish you would have just got them all.
Until recently, the LaRouche movement was citing
some
Rosa
guy, Rob
Luxemburg,
Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Dan Simpson, thank you for the raid. Thank you for the IDAN raid. We love it. Bring it in here, Raiders. Thank you for joining us. Get in here. We're learning about the LaRoucheites, because we were talking about that anti-war rally. I don't want to set this up too much. I've set up this clip 5 separate times.
You can count on me.
But
you're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Sony Sola.
Rob time TRRS Sankara TRRS Sankara TRRS Sankara.
Sunny Sola, thank you very much for the 9 months, tier 1. Thank you. I'll run the ad again at the end, okay? I've overdone it already on the ad today. Yeah, so that's all. We're listening to this episode of Revolutionary Left Radio, where they did this deep dive on LaRouche and what the LaRoucheites are all about. So that's what we're doing. Let's continue.
They saw the new left as overly focused on race and gender issues, and they wanted to kind of promote a super workerist type of movement that would strictly focus on kind of this whole mass strike strategy. This also this leads to them in 1969, 70 or so, there was a teacher strike in Ocean Hill, Brownsville in New York City over basically the question of POC communities having control over their own schools. And the teachers union, led by Albert Shanker, which was kind of infamously conservative, basically they went on strike against this community control initiative. And LaRouche's group was able to kind of make its mark at this instance by taking, they were the only group in SDS to support the teachers against the kind of POC-led community control initiative. And there was a lot of racial stuff going on with the teacher strike here. And so a lot of people kind of already kind of saw the NCLC as basically conceding to racism through this position.
Well, just to nail down this just a second. So there's a strike on the teacher strike, which in a vacuum is why wouldn't the left not support that? But it was basically to prevent people of color, specifically black people in their communities, having more say in the curriculum or in just the way the schools run. What exactly was the conflict there?
It was over how the schools would be run. Basically, they wanted to have more control over their. It was mostly Black and Puerto Rican communities, I believe.
Okay.
And there's a lot of research done about this strike because it's often used as the classic example of the old union-oriented left versus the new kind of liberation movement left. And so LaRouche's group really kind of made their name by taking the side of the teachers union here.
I see.
And the teachers union was also like majority Jewish at this point, or largely Jewish, so there was kind of this thing of like, there's anti-Semitism against teachers union from the black community. And so, and this is something that LaRouche would like later do even more heavily, is kind of use these like ethnic stereotypes and conflicts to like create outrageous propaganda and stuff. And so I feel like this whole Ocean Hill-Brownsville strike is interesting if you want to really look at the roots of where this kind of right-wing turn goes, I guess.
And there's also interesting echoes of like, I don't know, like I don't want to make the connections too, overstate them. But there's like this little, like today we're dealing with this issue of like teaching history and critical race theory and how do we tell American history. And I saw some of the pictures from the teacher strike in your article. One of the white teachers is holding up something saying, "Stop teaching race hatred to children." And I assume that's like the reverse racism of teaching about the crimes against black people in our society.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a straight line culturally, through the culture war to kind of
exactly. It kind of just goes to show that like a lot of these like modern day like controversies around wokeness, quote unquote, are really like not that new.
Totally.
And,
yeah.
It's nothing new here.
I mean, on that subject, it's crazy when you look back on the long history of this whole college campuses, wokeness on college campuses. Like you can go back as literally a century and find newspaper headlines about this exact same thing. As much as these people talk about like how now there's this woke movement, things weren't like they were before, and there's this degenerate thread. I mean, this is the exact same conversation that's going on at least a century in our culture.
So that's really like I thought that was really interesting, the whole Ocean Hill-Brownsville strike, and that's something I'd like to research more, honestly, just because it seems like a really complicated like chapter of New Left history and labor history in general.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we have a basic picture of where he comes from, why he's an important figure to wrestle with in the first place, what some of the continuities of his ideas and the kind of cultural conditions and issues that were happening in his time bleed into today. And we talked about his various sects, breaking off from larger Trotskyist parties, eventually culminating in his own sect, the NCLC. And they're a ostensibly socialist Marxist organization, but now they're talking about going beyond Trotsky. They're drawing on figures like Luxemburg, but they're also kind of taking, in interesting ways, kind of some conservative cultural stances more than anything at this time. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a pretty good picture of how things are going. So the next thing that really happens is you have the LaRouche group. They're probably a bit more culty and overly centralized than the average Marxist group, but it's really Operation Mop-Up where you see a disconnect from reality. And that's the first phase. And then the second phase is the Chris White affair. So I'm going to begin with Operation Mop-Up. So Operation Mop-Up is essentially, it starts as a rivalry with the CPUSA. The NCLC would go to their meetings and harass them, and they'd get thrown out. I'm sure, we may have encountered, Spartacus League people doing stuff like this. This is something, sectarian kind of, groups always do. They'll go to, the rival groups' meetings, and they'll denounce them and do some stuff like that. Red Guards Austin would do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So CPUSA accuses them of being government agents. And, it's possible. I can understand why they would see the possibility of that, but there's really no evidence that they were. At this point, it's pretty clear, they were acting on their own initiative, doing this on their own. And so there's already this rivalry between the two. And so the NCLC launches a national welfare rights campaign to rival the CPUSA's own campaign. So CPUSA reacts by kind of starting an anti-NCLC campaign and comparing them to the Klan, calling them racist. Which, given their position on the strike we talked about earlier, we can see where that comes from. And I'm sure there's all those other weird stuff in their propaganda already. Mm-hmm. So this gives LaRouche the pretext to launch an all-out campaign to see that the quote, CP cannot hold a meeting on the East Coast. We'll mop them up in 2 months.
We're learning about the LaRoucheites.
And so basically, the narrative that LaRouche was feeding to his members was that the CPUSA had been taken over by the CIA, And like everyone jokes about how like the CPUSA is like 80% feds or whatever, but that doesn't. It's clearly there are like federal agents who infiltrated the Communist Party, but LaRouche is like basically saying that the whole organization is just completely taken over by the CIA, and that they're going to collaborate with the state to destroy the NCLC, which is the only like organization that can lead the country to revolution and lead the world revolution. And so they do this whole Operation Mop-Up thing. He says, I'm just going to read some quotes from LaRouche himself. He says, Operation Mop-Up. The class struggle is for keeps, echoed LaRouche's call. We must dispose of the stinking corpse, the CP, the editorial said, to ensure that it cannot act as a host for maggots and other parasites, preparing future scabby Nixonite attacks on the working class. If we were to vacillate, we would be guilty of betraying the human race. Our job is to pulverize the Communist Party. So basically, they start coming up with this whole thing that like the Communist Party is like the biggest enemy and the biggest like barrier to revolution, which is like, we see in the left infighting, the way some of these left groups fight with each other. They do kind of act like other leftist groups are the biggest enemy to them and the biggest thing in the way of like getting to revolution. And so that's basically kind of how they justify this whole campaign against the CP. But it's an extremely violent campaign.
Yes.
So they literally organize goon squads and all over the East Coast and go to Communist Party meetings and just beat people up. Here's a description of it from this book by Dennis King. Mob-up began in New York. It spread to Philadelphia, Buffalo, Detroit, and other cities. Attackers were sometimes brought out from out of town so their faces wouldn't be recognized. In several cities, they broke up public meetings and invaded leftist bookstores, beating anyone who tried to borrow their way. In New York, they ambushed individual CP leaders on the street. In Detroit, they administered a savage beating to a partially paralyzed left-wing activist on crutches. In Philadelphia, 25 to 30 NCLC members raided a meeting of the Public Workers
The
Action
threat of red tube is real kind of
Quote,
shit.
the steps were a mass of blood, said a PWAC activist.
For sure.
As soon as I walked out, I was hit by a pole, unquote. Although no one was critically injured in any of the attacks, several were hospitalized with broken bones and many required medical treatment for cuts and bruises. So that kind of gives you I just kind of wanted to read that to kind of give a depiction of what was going down here. So you've got these violent attacks on the Communist Party, and so what happens is actually really interesting. Is the SWP, LaRouche's old organization, decides to kind of bury the hatchet with the CP and actually like form a united front to defend them from these attacks.
Right.
And so other Trotskyist groups actually join in.
A weird a moment of left unity against another ostensibly left organization that's literally physically attacking all of these organizations.
Right. It's really
wild.
interesting how, because this is kind of like an anti-fascist united front in action.
Yeah.
Like all these different leftist groups are like putting aside their differences and forming like a common front to like form defense units against these just crazy thugs who are ostensibly left wing, but it's like, so I thought about it. It's like, well, what did Mussolini do? Like he just started like squadristas that would go around like beating up like communists and socialists and breaking up trade unions and stuff. And that was really like the service he gave to the ruling class.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, yes, they might be like subjectively Marxist, but they're acting like Mussolini did, basically.
Right. Yeah, whether they're fascist or CIA plants or just asshole weirdo wreckers, functionally their effect is the same.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like we should also pay attention to the fact that every fascist movement uses socialist language, right? Radicalizes people because of the contradictions inherent to the economic system that we have, and uses this kind of socialist language and uses this kind of false revolution to promote itself. Right? That's why we need to pay attention to what's going on at these like LaRouche influenced anti-war rallies that we're getting people saying like, if you don't support that, you support the war movement, you support the war machine, which is of course not true. But we need to make sure we understand this distinction and understand that even when folks like this sometimes use language that's designed to appeal to Marxists, or they use that kind of Marxist language, doesn't mean that they're allies of ours. Doesn't mean that they're potential people that we need to organize with or work with. Yeah, Trumpism is like it's the whole thing. It's like, yeah, the supporting Trump from the left, the MAGA communists, the patriotic socialists. You know, it's the same thing. We also need to build the left to cut these reactionaries out and beat them at organization, which exactly is something. The scary thing is that is not what's happening. And in fact, the left is just being splintered. This is the whole fucking problem with the war in Russia and Ukraine, right? And so many people on both an individual and a organizational level have allowed the Russian-Ukraine war to split the left. And so many people that I thought maybe should have known better ended up standing with NATO and standing with the US government. And then that gives power to these LaRouchites to then go in and make these anti-war arguments and radicalize people on the right. Okay, Matt. Yeah, they had like 200 people there yesterday. I bet $100. There's 10 times that at the Answer Coalition in March. I did something really stupid earlier because I pointed out that I showed the ad for that march, that anti-war march sponsored by Answer and Code Pink and all these organizations on March 18th. And I think I got confused at the time. And I thought, was that the same weekend? Did they do that at the same weekend? Am I confused here? But no, that's next month. Exactly. And for people to say like, well, what, the left is not organizing any anti-war movements. Why are you shitting on these LaRouchites and libertarians for being anti-war? Like, do you support the war or what? And the answer is that the left is organizing protests, like we're seeing in March 18th with the whole Answer Coalition protest, which is being done in conjunction with Code Pink and in conjunction with PSL and all these like revolutionary groups. And we can support those. And that doesn't mean that we need to try and reach out to these like right-wing cultists as if they're, you know, our allies or our potential allies. We never hear about them because they aren't annoying enough. That's part of it. Yeah, that's part of it. I bet a lot of these people just want the war to move to China. Absolutely. That's when, and you see the same people saying that, talking about Tucker Carlson, like Tucker Carlson is some kind of like anti-war voice. It's the exact same thing. That's what the Tucker Carlsons of the world want, is they want to split the Russia-China alliance and then everyone go after China. They want to have an alliance with Russia rather than antagonizing both Russia and China at the same time. Right? Okay, let's continue. Running a little low on time here.
How they got the left to kind of unite against them. And so, you just have this insane campaign. The thing is like, like I said before, the LaRouche movement people, they were all pretty like kind of middle class, like nerdy types. And so they weren't really the tough types who were able to pull this off.
And you know what? This is my pledge to you. It's my pledge to the community. Before that march, I will definitely bring on some people from either Answer or from PSL or from DSA International Coalition to talk about these very issues and to talk about their rally that they're going to be having in March. This is my pledge to you. Okay? Maybe I could even get Brian Becker to come on here. Who knows? Maybe I can reach out to Brian Becker. In fact, that's what I will do. What I'm going to do is DM Rania Kalik and see if she can pass me a message to Brian Becker to get Brian Becker to come on the program prior to this Answer Coalition march, anti-war march. This is my pledge to you. I'm going to do this over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully we can talk to Brian Becker on the podcast. That'd be a real thrill. DSA International is how I originally found out about TRRS. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because I had Jorge and the other guy from I only know him as from his Twitter Grayson Lanza. Yeah, I had both of them on to talk about China. That's right. I would actually like to listen to this podcast faster, but there doesn't seem to be an option on the web browser. The huge thing is that we already saw this shit in people who participated in Iraq protests in the early 2000s who have legit become insane libertarians or right-wingers or literal LaRouche'ites. It's not anything the left hasn't seen, but it might be something that the younger left hasn't seen. For sure, Dr. Megan, and that's why I think it's important to pay attention to this and learn about this context. Let's continue.
So it really, they did some damage, but in the end, they weren't hardcore enough to actually like destroy the CPUSA like they wanted. Mm-hmm. But at this point, it's like anyone who stays with LaRouche at this point, it's kind of like a loyalty test. You go with some insane, ridiculous stuff, and people are going to leave. But the people who stay and who go along with it are going to be more loyal because it's like kind of like a way of filtering out the people who aren't like dedicated enough to your leadership and won't go down the path that you're setting, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see some interesting echoes of that in, not to talk about this organization too much, but in the Black Hammer situation.
Right. Like the whole Anne Frank thing, for example.
Exactly.
Like that was like a way of creating a dividing line and creating discord.
Or even his Joker video, Anti-Antifa, when he was going against Antifa and making those insane Joker-fied videos. Like, if you're going to stand behind him the whole time and and then after it's all over, you're like, I'm ready for the next shoot. What next video are we doing? Like, you are right or die.
It's a loyalty test is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's it also kind of reminds me of QAnon. Because it's like we laugh at the insane stuff that QAnon believers say,
Black Hammer stuff.
But in the end, it functions as a way to kind of show your loyalty to the cause and say, I am so dedicated to this cause that I actually do believe that the Jewish space lasers are going to, destroy, whatever. Like
you've got to support Marjorie Taylor Greene because she promotes defunding the Ukraine war.
All the QAnon
so she's our ally, obviously.
It works as a loyalty test, and it forges a cohesive group that's not going to question orders.
Yeah, exactly. So
and that gets even crazier.
Yeah, go ahead.
So next step after the whole NCLC goes after the Communist Party and Operation Mop-Up is this whole adventure in psychology, because LaRouche is, he's Mr. Renaissance man intellectual. He claims to have been he claims to be a physicist, a psychologist, an economist, and he kind of develops his own kind of psychological theories. And he has an article called Beyond Psychoanalysis from this era where he kind of claims to have overcome psychoanalysis and had developed a whole new version of psychology, basically around what's called ego stripping. And first there's this guy Konstantin George who gets accused of being a spy for the Stasi and the KGB by the NCLC. He's a member of the NCLC, and so LaRouche claims that he recognized the symptoms that showed that he was brainwashed by the KGB, and he successfully deprogrammed him. And so this was kind of the first step in the whole brainwashing thing, and that kind of was accepted.
I would never brainwash you.
They're already accepting Operation Mop-Up. But then there's another guy, Chris White, who was in Europe. I think he was in Germany, and he came back to the U.S. to attend an NCLC Congress, one of their big conventions, and he was showing signs of just being very out of it, basically. People who are there say that he did show signs of psychological turmoil. He was not all there. Mm-hmm. But LaRouche basically says that this guy is a programmed assassin that was programmed by the CIA and other intelligence agencies to assassinate LaRouche, and that anybody in the organization could be essentially programmed by these kind of Manchurian candidate type schemes. And this was actually before MK Ultra was exposed, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But I imagine like you still did have like
They let LaRouche
discourse
use some
around, like,
MK Ultra
brainwashing
tricks to
and
win
stuff
over the
in
lefties.
But basically, so LaRouche was
Insidious.
claiming that like, you know, through using computer science and stuff, because LaRouche was really into computers too, that they have basically figured out a way to program the brain using like certain code words, and LaRouche had recognized the code words, and that he was able to, you know, use his psychological techniques to brainwash people who had been brainwashed. And so this is where like everyone in the org is being like put through these ego stripping sessions, which are basically just like insane psychological like torture, where LaRouche would just like berate people for hours on end until like they broke down and like satisfied him. And you know, I just want to like say real quick that like the idea of brainwashing itself is a very controversial idea, because it kind of comes out of you know, the Korean War. There were these claims that like U.S. troops who like defected to you know, the side of North Korea were basically like just had been like captured and brainwashed by.
They were brainwashed. These like black soldiers that defected were brainwashed by the Koreans for being like, why are you bombing us and helping the people that hate you? And some of these soldiers were like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. And these people in Washington are like, what are these sophisticated brainwashing techniques? What is this? What is going on here? It wasn't actually that complicated. You know? It was not actually very, very complicated.
And that the Chinese had like figured out how to like do brainwashing. And so we all know about MK Ultra, which was itself a response to these like claims that the communists like developed brainwashing technology. But in the end, like I think a lot of people, like I think, convincingly argue about
literally the amazing thing about the CIA is they became so fascinated with this concept of brainwashing that then they were like, how do we do this? And they were like drugging people and giving them LSD and like literally trying to figure out how to reprogramming people's brains, all that MK Ultra shit, when really all these sophisticated brainwashing techniques that they were talking about was literally just like making people read some pamphlets being like, why are you murdering us? That was the big sophisticated brainwashing technique that they were trying to copy.
The idea of brainwashing itself is just kind of like this crazy anti-communist trope, and that it's, you know, the idea that like you can like kind of break people down, that is true, and that's what MK Ultra did. They would use LSD and other stuff to break people down, but to put them back together to do whatever you want them to do is another story. And some people claim, you know, there are, you know, people who claim they did figure out how to do that, but that's all in the speculation, because as far as we know, CIA never actually did successfully develop a brainwashing technique.
Right. At least not in the hard brainwashing, like, you know, the maximum version of what we mean by that. Yeah,
at least as far as we know. You know?
Sure.
Maybe there is like some declassified stuff, but like I think the idea of brainwashing itself kind of comes from this like misunderstanding of what happened in Korea, because these like anti-communist State Department people couldn't imagine that like good American boys would like on their own volition come to like see North Korea as like, you know, the lesser evil in the war.
Right. Yeah.
They had to have some kind of brainwashing
there
technology.
We go.
Almost like European colonizers, when they would come to settler colonialism in North America, there was constantly defections to the indigenous tribes.
Right.
And they were just perplexed. Like, we are the carriers of civilization. Why would you go over to them willingly? And very few came the other direction. So yeah, they have to explain that cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. They probably had some theories about like, oh, they're doing magic to,
right, exactly,
you know, hypnotize us or just some nonsense like that.
Right.
But yeah, so, you know, this whole Chris White affair, it basically puts the whole organization through this insane paranoid drama. And there is a book, the book, Lyndon LaRouche and New American Fascism by Dennis King has a bunch of information about it. But there's another
I think after
book,
this next section,
written by this guy.
I think after this next section, we'll put a pin in this and then maybe pick up the thread tomorrow.
Kevin Coogan. It's called Smiling Man from a Dead Planet. It's like a 1,000-page long PDF that has like a ton of information on all this. And it's written by someone who was an ex-member. He's writing under the name Hylozoic Hedgehog, but his real name is Kevin Coogan. And he wrote a really interesting book on Francis Parker Yockey. Yeah. But so he has like this whole a book called "The
I should
Smiling
get
Man from
Horse
the
on.
Dead Planet." The
He's
Mystery of
often
Lyndon
at school
LaRouche, that
during the
has,
day,
like,
though,
a
I
whole
think.
breakdown
My
of
understanding.
what could have happened during this whole Chris White affair. And it's really interesting to read and just see like how paranoid and out of control this was. Because they even like did like press conferences and stuff publicly. They had like public press conferences where they invite the public, and they would be like, "Look, the CIA is doing a brainwashing operation on our organization. Where's the public outrage?" So it's like we don't really know if LaRouche actually believed and that there was brainwashing occurring and that he was like preventing it, or if it was just like a purely cynical maneuver to just kind of like forge his cult. But there is a lot of information out there on it, and people are interested in going deeper into that. I recommend checking out that book.
So just to be clear, Chris White was a member of the...
Yes, he was a member of the National Committee, Caucus of Labor Committees, and at this point they were an international organization. They had people in Germany, they had people in Sweden. They formed what was called the European Labor Party, and they had some really interesting activities in Sweden working with U.S. war deserters from Vietnam who were like refugees in Sweden because Sweden was neutral. And so there was some connection with that as well. But yeah, in the end, he was an international member of LaRouche, of the NCLC. And he was kind of used as the example of like a brainwashed person who needed to be deprogrammed by LaRouche. And it just throws the whole organization into this paranoid conspiracy mode. So I think, and so I think like it's fair to say like at this point, like it's a cult. Yeah. Like the word cult gets thrown around a lot, but I think in this case, like it's just very appropriate.
Well, you have a centralized leader, and one of the things that these cult leaders do is begin representing themselves as the only true carrier of the torch for whatever it is that they're claiming to carry for. And then this whole idea of I have actually access to higher knowledge. I understand the KGB is after me, and they actually have this, this experiment they do to brainwash people, and now you're an agent of them. And it's like the fantasies of the cult leader, the absurdities, they can almost say anything, and the whole organization then becomes shaped around that individual leader's basically arbitrary whims or psychosis or whatever it is, and that is a fundamental feature of cultism.
Yeah, and it's all about this idea that like they are the one elites, the one vanguard that can save the world from the rising tide of fascism and imperialism and capitalism. Like they are the one group that has the esoteric knowledge, that has the intellectual skills to do it, and everyone else who disagrees with them, well, they're either CIA or KGB or whatever, and violence against them is justified. Anything against them is justified because they are holding back the revolutionary movement that only Lynn Marcus or Lyndon LaRouche can lead.
Right.
And so around like the mid 70s, the organization like starts to kind of change ideologically. And there's one thing they did that's pretty.
Just be dubious of anyone who says, I do communism right, everyone else ever is wrong, except if it's me. When I say that kind of thing, it's true. And I'm just reluctantly admitting that. In most cases, though, you're right. Like 99% of the time, you want to avoid that.
They keep saying that basically they get obsessed with Rockefeller and the Rockefeller family.
The Rockefeller stuff is a big red flag as well.
Is like going to unleash a fascist coup. And they're going to take over America and whatever. This fascist threat is inevitable. And so they tried to organize like their own kind of street gangs called the Revolutionary Youth Movement. And like the kind of stuff that they like say about black people in this period is just absolutely like offensive and insane. Like they would talk about Amiri Baraka, who was like a poet who became a kind of Marxist-Leninist leader. And they picked him as like number one like public enemy, and they basically turned him into like the worst like stereotype of like a black person, and used like him as like a way to kind of like launder all this like anti-black rhetoric. They had this whole thing about how you're going to lose your job to a quote unquote welfare loafer, a methadone crazed dope fiend, some gang member brought in from a ghetto neighborhood. Jesus. They were just attacking like black activists, like black CP members. So they really like basically like Their newspaper would carry headlines such as CP turns rebels into N-words. They would come up with these like demeaning nicknames like Ron, Race Riot, Tyson. And they end up going into this kind of like anti-black stuff. And but at the same time, they're recruiting young black people to their revolutionary youth movement. And so they're kind of able to like say, oh, but we're not actually racist because we're working with black youth in the ghetto. But a lot of these people that they recruited didn't end up staying. They didn't end up staying around because they were basically just like treated as like shock troops by the, like mostly white like intellectual leadership. But they did.
And this is true, Dr. Maggot, and this is exactly the reason why we need to be able to separate the truth from the conspiracy shit. There was the business plot, but that wasn't limited to the Rockefellers, and was also genuine Nazis influenced by Prescott Bush. Right? It's a long tradition of this, of using these very real phenomenon as a way to weave this kind of conspiratorial picture, which doesn't really advance the class struggle in any real, meaningful way. It is amazing how closely this mirrors today's activities. That's why I think it's really important to do this kind of deep dive. Let's make this part 1, okay? Part 2 of digging into the LaRouchites can be tomorrow. We made it 45 minutes into this clip. That's not so bad. We'll listen to the rest of this tomorrow for our two-part expose on these LaRouchites. Lana, you're just here in time. You're just here in time for the very end. But yeah, I think this is really important for us to understand this context. And before I go as well, we talked about this very dangerous kind of cult-like behavior that LaRouche introduced. Obviously, that's not something that we support here on this program. Obviously, but as you know, folks, we're just a few generous chatters could get us to that sub goal today. We're very, very close to getting to that sub goal. And again, if you missed it, I played it a couple times. If you missed it though, I did prepare a little video presentation about this community. I'll play this one last time. So please, if you enjoy the content, if you enjoy the community, please do subscribe to this program. Unlike the LaRouche stuff, it's not a cult. There's nothing weird going on. It's simply a community of friends and like-minded individuals. And this video will explain the rest. Please subscribe.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down clout, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship
two-dimensional,
Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult.
And it says right there. It says right there, it's not a cult. As you know. You like that, Lana? I spent several hours making this video this weekend. I put time and energy and effort into creating this. Thank you again for the gifted sub, Ben. And folks, just a few generous chatters could get us to the finish line. Just a few generous chatters could get us across the finish line today. Yeah, Ben, all the copy for that was
You can
written
count on
by
me. You're gonna have good old
ChatGPT.
Rob to talk you through all this.
I created all the copy using ChatGPT. I gave it a little edit. Like I did change a few little things, but 95% of that was spat out by ChatGPT. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Maggot, for the gifted sub. Thank you.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And thank you, Grimgirl, for the 5 months tier 1. Thank you very much. It looks like an early 80s National Film Board clip. I know I really did nail the aesthetic that I was going for. I was really trying to create something with this exact aesthetic. Someone mentioned earlier the Dharma Initiative. That was a big influence as well. I fucking love that episode from season 2 of Lost when they first watched the Dharma Initiative video. I wanted to get that exact aesthetic for a sort of ad for this community. We're very close, folks.
You can
very
count
close.
On me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Magyar Guy. Thank you for the gifted sub from Magyar Guy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And look at that, a brand new community member. A brand new community member, Vimes68.
Use the computer
Thank
to
you,
mark
Vimes.
up the size of the account.
Lol.
And thank you, Dimitri, for the 200 friend coin. The video works, folks. Pete Buttigieg is on top of things now. He's on top of things. He's sending sternly worded emails. Sternly worded letters. Oh my. He's really taking the gloves off. Pete's taking the gloves off now. You're underlining things in red ink? Yeah, hell yeah. He's going to tell him to knock it off. He's going to call the CEO's manager. That's right. Folks, we are three lowly subs away. 3 subs away from crossing the finish line here. We're so close, tantalizingly close, achingly close. And yeah, Lana, I did see the thing. What did you say? Matthew Heimbach holding the Soviet flag, claiming he's not a Nazi anymore while wearing a Nazbo logo on his shirt. But yeah, it's not clear what's going on there at all. It's not clear. We got to make sure we ally with these people. One generous chatter could close the gap. That's right, Fart Party 69. One generous chatter could do it. Wouldn't it be exciting to be that person?
You can
to
count
be
on
that
me.
generous
You're gonna have
chatter.
good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Dimitri, for the gifted sub. Thank you very much. And some Falun Gong guys are there.
You can
wow.
count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to
Wow.
talk you through all this.
Look at this. And Ben, thank you for another gifted sub from Ben and PS.
You can count
and
on
thank
me.
you
You're
to
gonna have good old Rob
Dr.
to
Maggot
talk you
as
through
well.
all this.
Thank you, Dr. Maggot. Look at that. That's wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone, for supporting this channel and this community. Thank you for, rewarding me for the hours that I spent making this like deranged, insane, like 80s self-help cult information infomercial that I did this
no
weekend.
Choice but to stand.
And Magyar Guy, thank you for the 450 Patreon pledge. You don't get a lot of those. Thank you, Magyar Guy. That's so cool. There we go. I don't even promote my Patreon ever. You're the only one I trust not to be running a cult. Well, you know it's not because we joke about it. You know? And listen, it says right here.
Confident that you will.
It says right here.
The elite tier. It's not a cult.
Right? It just says it right there. So that should pretty much. Well, Ben, I'm sorry. I mean, as an elite member of the community, Ben, and P.S., you're entitled to your free speech, obviously. I don't agree personally. If that settles it, exactly. In case there was any confusion about it. That was so reassuring. Glad I didn't just join a cult. Exactly. That would be really a difficult position for you. Fortunately, anyone that just tuned in today, anyone that's a new member of the community, no need to worry. No cause for concern. It's all good. Okay, let's see here. Thank you for watching today, everyone. This was a good one. Very enjoyable. Thank you for hanging out today. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do part 2 of our dive into the LaRoucheite cult tomorrow. This has been a very good stream to listen to while hiking through the woods. That sounds nice, Biggerwig. That sounds nice. Where's my music here? So thanks again, friends. Thanks, Lyndon. See you tomorrow for the deprogramming session. Exactly. I'm deprogramming all of you to be immune to propaganda. Do you think I like this? You think I like doing this? I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you. Okay? There's lots of other things that I could be doing with my time. And just because you need to give me your credit card information and your social security number, that's a security measure. What's the big deal?